All around the world, there are strange ruins buried deep underground. Massive tools that look like they were made for giants. Carvings done with such precision we can't explain how they were made, even today. Some scientists dismiss them. Others dig deeper and find even more questions. And then there are ancient maps showing lands that shouldn't have been discovered. Stories passed down of great floods and lost knowledge. Could these be echoes of something real, something older than we ever imagined? In this video, we'll explore the artifacts, the theories, and the unanswered questions that challenge everything we think we know about human history. Before we begin, let us know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Drop it in the comments below, subscribe to our channel, and settle in for a fascinating journey. The field of archaeology aims to understand human history through the study of material remains. It is a systematic process that involves excavation, dating, analysis, and interpretation of artifacts, structures, and other evidence left behind by past societies. The accepted timeline of human civilization taught in schools and universities worldwide suggests a gradual progression from simple hunter-gatherer groups to more complex agricultural societies, eventually leading to cities, writing, and what we commonly recognize as civilization. This timeline places the earliest known civilizations, such as those in Mesopotamia and Egypt, at around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. Before this, human activity is generally understood to be less organized, lacking the hallmarks of advanced societal structures. This is the mainstream view, built upon decades, indeed centuries, of scholarly work, peer review, and established methodologies. It is a robust framework, constantly being refined but largely consistent in its fundamental understanding of humanity's past. However, there exists another perspective, often referred to as forbidden archaeology or anomalous archaeology. This concept refers to discoveries, interpretations, or theories about the past that do not fit neatly into the accepted mainstream framework. These forbidden ideas challenge the conventional timeline or understanding of human capabilities in ancient times. They suggest that intelligent, possibly advanced societies might have existed far earlier than currently believed, or that human development was not a simple, linear progression, but perhaps more complex, involving periods of high achievement followed by decline, or even that certain knowledge or technologies were present in ancient times that contradict the notion of primitive early humans. The term forbidden does not imply a grand conspiracy, but rather describes how certain pieces of evidence or lines of inquiry are often overlooked, dismissed, or simply not integrated into the standard narrative by established academic institutions. This can happen for several reasons, which are rooted in the nature of scientific progress and the human tendency to resist ideas that strongly contradict long-held beliefs. One primary reason discoveries might be ignored or explained away is the concept of a scientific paradigm. A paradigm is a shared set of assumptions, theories, and methods that defines a scientific discipline at a given time. In archaeology, the dominant paradigm is that human civilization emerged relatively recently, after a long period of Stone Age development. When new evidence appears that seems to contradict this paradigm, it can be met with skepticism. This is not necessarily a malicious act, but rather a natural part of how science works. Scientists are trained to be critical, and truly revolutionary findings require very strong, repeated, and undeniable evidence to overturn established theories. If a discovery does not fit the current understanding, it may be reinterpreted to fit, or its significance may be downplayed, or its dating may be questioned, or it might simply be seen as an isolated anomaly that does not require a re-evaluation of the entire framework. The academic process values consistency and incremental advancements within the accepted framework. The mechanisms by which discoveries are explained away are varied. For instance, if an artifact appears to be too advanced for its supposed age, archaeologists might argue it is a natural formation mistaken for a tool, or that it was somehow displaced from a younger layer to an older one through geological activity or human disturbance. Dating methods themselves, while generally reliable, can also be subject to debate. If a radiocarbon date from a site suggests a much older human presence than expected, researchers might question the sample's purity, the context of its finding, or whether it was contaminated. The interpretation of structures is another area of contention. A configuration of stones might be seen as a natural rock outcrop by mainstream archaeologists, while proponents of forbidden archaeology might interpret it as the ruins of an ancient building or part of a deliberate construction. This difference in interpretation often stems from the initial assumptions held by the researchers. If one expects to find only primitive structures from a certain period, that is what they are more likely to see or accept. Funding for archaeological research is another practical aspect that influences what is studied and how it is interpreted. Most archaeological projects rely on funding from universities, governments, or private grants. These institutions tend to favour projects that fit within established academic interests and that are likely to produce results that can be published in peer-reviewed journals. Research proposals that challenge fundamental timelines or propose radical new theories might struggle to secure funding, as they are perceived as higher risk or less academically sound by review boards. This creates a cycle where mainstream research gets funded, which in turn reinforces the mainstream narrative, making it harder for alternative views to gain traction or access the resources needed to thoroughly investigate their claims. The peer review system, while essential for maintaining scientific quality, can also act as a filter against truly revolutionary ideas. When a research paper is submitted to a journal, it is reviewed by other experts in the field. If these experts hold a conventional view, they might be more likely to reject papers that present evidence for forbidden archaeology, not necessarily out of malice, but because the evidence is seen as insufficient, the methods flawed, or the interpretations too speculative from their established viewpoint. This can lead to a situation where proponents of forbidden archaeology struggle to publish their findings in mainstream academic journals, which in turn limits their exposure to the wider scientific community and contributes to their marginalization. They may resort to publishing in non-academic books, magazines, or on the internet, which then further isolates their work from mainstream academic scrutiny and acceptance. The difference between established archaeology and forbidden archaeology also lies in their fundamental approaches to evidence and theory. Mainstream archaeology typically operates on the principle of uniformitarianism, which assumes that the geological and natural processes observed today have operated in the past in a similar manner. It also tends to be conservative, preferring explanations that require the fewest leaps of faith and that build upon existing knowledge. New evidence is integrated cautiously and only after rigorous testing and validation. Forbidden archaeology, on the other hand, often begins by questioning these fundamental assumptions. It might be more open to catastrophic theories of Earth's past, or to the idea of non-human intervention, or to radical shifts in human capabilities. It often highlights anomalies as crucial points of interest, suggesting they are not exceptions to the rule, but rather clues to a different, perhaps more complex historical reality. Where mainstream archaeology seeks to refine and expand the known timeline, forbidden archaeology seeks to overturn it or at least drastically alter its starting points and major milestones. The impact of cultural beliefs and historical narratives also plays a role. Many societies have origin myths or historical accounts that differ from the scientific understanding of the past. These can range from stories of ancient giants, global floods, or highly advanced lost civilizations. While mainstream archaeology often views these as myths or symbolic stories, forbidden archaeology might look for physical evidence to support them, suggesting they contain kernels of historical truth that have been forgotten or misunderstood. This willingness to consider ancient myths as potential historical records sets it apart from the more skeptical and evidence-driven approach of mainstream archaeology. It explores the possibility that traditional histories, passed down through generations, might offer clues to a time before our documented records begin, a time of different human achievements and struggles. Furthermore, the scale of implication of some forbidden archaeology claims is immense. If it were proven that highly advanced civilizations existed tens of thousands of years ago, it would necessitate a complete rewriting of history, geology, and anthropology. Such a paradigm shift would challenge deeply entrenched academic careers, textbooks, and institutional frameworks. It would affect our understanding of human potential, technological development, and even our place in the universe. The sheer magnitude of these implications means that the burden of proof for forbidden archaeology is extraordinarily high. It is not enough to find one puzzling artifact. It would require a vast body of consistent, undeniable evidence that cannot be explained by any other means within the current scientific framework. This high bar for evidence means that many claims, even if intriguing, simply do not meet the stringent requirements for mainstream acceptance. In essence, forbidden archaeology sets the stage for questioning the accepted timelines of human civilization by pointing to discoveries that seem to defy those timelines. It highlights the difference in methodology and interpretation between those who uphold the current scientific consensus and those who believe significant parts of humanity's past have been overlooked or misunderstood. It encourages a broader view of what is possible in the deep past and challenges us to consider evidence that, while perhaps unsettling to established views, might offer new insights into the long and complex story of humanity on Earth. This field does not always present definitive answers, but it consistently raises questions about the completeness of our historical narrative, pushing the boundaries of what we think we know about where we came from and how long we have been here. This exploration is not about disproving science, but about asking if science has fully explored all avenues of inquiry, particularly those that lead to uncomfortable or challenging conclusions about the linear progression of human development. The very concept of what constitutes a fact or evidence can also differ between these two approaches. Mainstream archaeology often relies on a chain of well-established, independently verifiable facts. For example, a fossil is dated through multiple methods, its context in a geological layer is confirmed, and its anatomical features are compared to a wide array of known species. This rigorous process is designed to minimize error and personal bias. In contrast, forbidden archaeology might sometimes rely on less conventional forms of evidence, such as anecdotal accounts, unverified stories, or artifacts whose dating or context are highly disputed. The interpretation of ancient texts, which mainstream scholars often view as symbolic or mythological, might be taken literally by forbidden archaeologists as historical accounts of advanced technology or lost knowledge. This difference in what is accepted as valid proof creates a significant gap in communication and acceptance between the two camps. Moreover, the training and background of researchers play a role. Mainstream archaeologists undergo extensive university education, learning specific theories, methodologies, and disciplinary norms. They are taught to build upon existing knowledge and to contribute to the ongoing refinement of the established historical narrative. Those who pursue forbidden archaeology may come from a variety of backgrounds, sometimes without formal archaeological training. This can lead to accusations from mainstream academics that their methods are unscientific, their interpretations are speculative, or their claims lack the necessary rigor. Conversely, proponents of forbidden archaeology might argue that mainstream academics are too rigid, too resistant to new ideas, and too invested in maintaining the status quo to objectively evaluate challenging evidence. This creates a cultural divide within the broader discussion of humanity's past, where mutual respect and open-minded dialogue can be difficult to achieve. The public's perception also influences the landscape of forbidden archaeology. Popular media, including television shows, books, and online content, often sensationalize claims of lost civilizations and ancient mysteries. While this can generate widespread interest in archaeology and history, it can also blur the lines between genuine scientific inquiry and speculative theories, sometimes leading to misinformed public opinion. The mainstream scientific community often finds itself in a position of having to debunk or explain away popular claims, which can further entrench the divide and make it even harder for truly anomalous but legitimate findings to gain attention and serious consideration. This popularization can sometimes be a double-edged sword, raising awareness, but also fostering an environment where sensationalism might overshadow careful empirical investigation. Ultimately, the existence of forbidden archaeology highlights the dynamic and sometimes contentious nature of scientific progress. Science is not a static body of knowledge, but a continuous process of questioning, observing, and revising. While mainstream archaeology provides a coherent and well-supported framework for understanding our past, the questions raised by forbidden archaeology serve as a reminder that our knowledge is always incomplete. It challenges us to remain open to the possibility that there might be significant gaps in our understanding of deep time and human capabilities, encouraging a cautious yet curious approach to anomalies that do not easily fit into our current narratives. The discussion between these two perspectives is vital for the continuous evolution of our understanding of who we are and where we come from. It forces scholars to re-examine their assumptions and to consider the potential for new evidence to reshape our understanding of the incredibly long and complex story of humanity on Earth. This ongoing dialogue, even if at times strained, is an essential part of the pursuit of historical truth. The methods of inquiry employed by both sides also contribute to the divergence. Mainstream archaeology often relies on careful excavation, stratigraphy, the study of layers of rock and soil, artifact typology, and a range of scientific dating techniques such as radiocarbon dating, potassium-argon dating, and dendrochronology, tree ring dating. These methods are designed to provide context and age for discoveries with a high degree of confidence and reproducibility. Interpretations are usually conservative, based on the principle of parsimony, meaning the simplest explanation that fits the evidence is preferred. Forbidden archaeology, conversely, might sometimes question the reliability of these dating methods when they produce results that contradict its hypotheses. It might prioritize a pattern of anomalies over isolated finds, even if each individual anomaly is subject to alternative mainstream explanations. The argument is often made that the sheer number of anomalous finds, even if individually explainable, collectively point to a hidden history. This difference in what constitutes compelling evidence and how it should be interpreted lies at the heart of the ongoing disagreement between the two perspectives. The rigorous standards of proof in mainstream science are met with arguments that these standards are too restrictive when dealing with evidence that challenges foundational beliefs. Moreover, the focus of study can differ. Mainstream archaeology tends to concentrate on sites and periods where there is ample, clear evidence, gradually expanding the known record. It builds knowledge incrementally, layer by layer, year by year. Forbidden archaeology, by its nature, often focuses on the edges of the known, on the perplexing, the unexplained, and the data points that don't fit the established narrative. This means it often deals with sparse, ambiguous, or highly unusual evidence, which can be difficult to integrate into any coherent picture, whether mainstream or alternative. The risk of misinterpretation or overinterpretation of limited data is a significant concern for critics of forbidden archaeology. They argue that a few odd finds should not be used to overturn centuries of systematic research. The historical development of archaeological theory also plays a part. Early archaeology was often driven by a sense of discovery and less by rigid scientific methods. Over time, it professionalized, developing more rigorous techniques and theoretical frameworks. This professionalization, while necessary for scientific advancement, also led to the entrenchment of certain views and a cautious approach to anything that threatened the established order. The forbidden nature of certain discoveries can thus be seen as a consequence of this professionalization and the inherent conservatism of a mature scientific discipline. It is a natural human tendency to defend one's established knowledge base, and in science this defense often takes the form of requiring extremely high levels of proof for radical new ideas. This is not necessarily bad science, but it means that truly paradigm-shifting evidence must be exceptionally compelling. Finally, the philosophical implications are profound. If forbidden archaeology is correct, it would fundamentally alter humanity's self-perception. It would mean that we are not the pinnacle of a continuous upward progression from primitive beginnings, but perhaps part of a much older cycle of rise and fall. It would imply that knowledge and technology have been lost and rediscovered, challenging the idea of linear progress. This deep philosophical challenge is perhaps one of the most powerful underlying reasons for the resistance to forbidden archaeology. It is not just about specific dates or artifacts. It is about rewriting humanity's entire story and our understanding of our place in time. The implications extend beyond academic fields, touching on spiritual beliefs, cultural narratives, and even our understanding of human potential. The discussion of forbidden archaeology is therefore not merely an academic debate, but one that touches upon profound questions about human nature and our long, often mysterious journey on Earth. The term lost civilization evokes images of grand cities swallowed by the sea, ancient empires buried under sand, or advanced societies that vanished without a trace. In common usage, it often refers to a highly developed human society that existed in the distant past but is no longer known or remembered by mainstream history. For the purposes of understanding forbidden archaeology, defining lost civilization goes beyond mere ruins and touches upon what constitutes a civilization itself, why such a society might be considered lost, and the reasons its existence is a subject of intense debate rather than accepted fact. A civilization, from an archaeological and historical perspective, is generally understood to be a complex society with certain key characteristics. These include large population centres, often organised as cities, which serve as hubs for commerce, governance, and culture. A civilization typically exhibits an agricultural surplus, meaning it produces more food than it immediately consumes, allowing for the specialization of labour. This specialization leads to the development of different roles beyond basic food production, such as artisans, priests, soldiers, administrators, and merchants. Another hallmark is a social hierarchy, where people have different statuses and roles, often with a ruling class or organised government structure. The presence of monumental architecture, like temples, palaces, or large public works, is also a strong indicator of a civilization, as it requires organised labour and centralised planning. Furthermore, civilizations often develop systems of record-keeping, such as writing, mathematics, or complex calendrical systems, which allow for the transmission of knowledge and the administration of complex societies. The development of advanced technologies, even if basic by modern standards such as metallurgy, sophisticated irrigation systems, or precise engineering, also contributes to the definition. When we speak of a lost civilization in the context of forbidden archaeology, we're generally not referring to societies like the Mayans or the Indus Valley civilization, whose existence is well documented but whose specific details are still being uncovered. Instead, the term implies societies that existed far earlier than our earliest recognized civilizations, perhaps tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. Crucially, these hypothetical lost civilizations are often described as being highly advanced for their time, possessing knowledge or technologies that challenge our understanding of primitive human capabilities. This advancement does not necessarily mean they had electricity or modern machinery, but it suggests a level of sophistication in areas like architecture, astronomy, mathematics, metallurgy, or social organisation that vastly exceeds what conventional archaeology attributes to their proposed age. For instance, if a society from the last ice age were found to have built stone structures with engineering precision similar to that of the Great Pyramids, it would be considered highly advanced for that era. The idea of such societies existing in the very distant past is appealing to many who explore forbidden archaeology. It suggests a non-linear path for human development, where periods of high culture might have risen and fallen repeatedly throughout deep time, rather than a single, continuous climb from simple to complex. This challenges the standard view that human progress has been a steady, upward trajectory beginning only a few thousand years ago. Proponents of lost civilizations often suggest that humanity has experienced a cycle of advancement and decline, with past highly advanced cultures being wiped out by cataclysms or other events, leaving little or no trace that is currently recognized by mainstream science. The lost aspect of these civilizations is critical. It implies that their existence is not recognized, or if there are hints, they are not fully understood or accepted by mainstream academic archaeology. They are lost in terms of historical memory and archaeological discovery. There might be several reasons why such societies could become lost. One major theory is natural cataclysms, events like massive floods, volcanic eruptions, comet or asteroid impacts, or drastic climate shifts, such as the end of an ice age causing rapid sea level rise, could have wiped out entire populations and submerged coastal cities, leaving little remaining evidence on land. If a civilization was primarily coastal, a sudden rise in sea levels of hundreds of feet could hide its entire infrastructure beneath the ocean, making it extremely difficult to locate and study with current technology. Geological processes over vast stretches of time, such as erosion, sediment deposition, or tectonic plate movements, could also bury or destroy evidence, effectively erasing the physical footprint of past societies. Societal collapse is another potential reason for a civilization to become lost. While not always leading to complete erasure from history, a severe collapse could result in a dramatic loss of knowledge, technology, and organized social structures. Surviving populations might regress to a more primitive state, losing the ability to read their own writings, understand their past technologies, or even remember the details of their former existence. Over millennia, oral traditions could become myths, and physical remains could decay or be reused by subsequent less advanced cultures, obscuring their original purpose. This kind of collapse would make it hard for future archaeologists, even those with advanced tools, to recognize the remnants of a highly sophisticated past. The criteria for what constitutes a civilization become very important when discussing these hypothetical lost worlds. If a society existed without permanent large cities, or without writing, but possessed other advanced characteristics like complex social organization, advanced agriculture, or profound astronomical knowledge, would it still count as a civilization? Some definitions require all these elements, while others are more flexible. For instance, the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, a complex stone structure built by hunter-gatherers about 12,000 years ago, challenged the traditional view that monumental architecture and complex social organization only arose after the development of agriculture and settled towns. This shows that our understanding of what early human societies were capable of is constantly evolving, even within mainstream archaeology. The debate often centers on whether a society reached a critical threshold of complexity and organization to be called a civilization, especially when the evidence is scarce or ambiguous. The debate over the existence of these highly advanced, ancient lost civilizations primarily stems from the lack of clear, widely accepted physical evidence that fits the mainstream archaeological timeline. While proponents of forbidden archaeology point to various anomalies, unusual artifacts, ancient maps, submerged structures, or geological oddities, mainstream science typically offers alternative explanations for these findings. For instance, a perfectly cut stone might be attributed to natural geological processes, or later, less advanced human activity, rather than evidence of ancient precision engineering. A structure under the sea might be interpreted as a natural rock formation rather than a submerged ruin. The dating of anomalous objects is frequently challenged, with arguments made for contamination, misinterpretation of strata, or deliberate hoax. A core problem in this debate is the nature of proof. For mainstream archaeologists, a lost civilization requires not just intriguing hints, but a consistent body of evidence, including clear architectural remains, tools, human settlements, and contextual dating that places them unambiguously in a time far earlier than accepted history, demonstrating a level of complexity that is truly advanced for that era. Without this kind of robust, repeatable evidence, theories of lost civilizations remain in the realm of speculation. The burden of proof is very high, particularly because the implications of such a discovery would be so profound, necessitating a complete re-evaluation of human history. This means that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Furthermore, the concept of a lost civilization sometimes intersects with mythological traditions. Many cultures around the world have myths about a great flood that wiped out an earlier, more advanced world, or stories of gods and heroes who taught humanity crucial skills. While mainstream scholars often view these as allegorical tales or reflections of local, rather than global historical events, proponents of lost civilizations might interpret them as distorted memories of real past events and advanced societies. The challenge then becomes how to move from mythological narrative to verifiable archaeological fact, a leap that often proves difficult due to the lack of tangible, unambiguous physical proof. In summary, a lost civilization in the context of forbidden archaeology refers to a complex, highly developed human society that existed in the very distant past, perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, and whose existence is not recognized by mainstream history. These societies are considered lost because their physical traces are either buried, submerged, destroyed, or misinterpreted, and their memory exists only in fragmented myths or unusual archaeological finds. The debate surrounding their existence centers on the interpretation of ambiguous evidence, the rigorous demands for proof within academic archaeology, and the reluctance to overturn long-established timelines of human development without overwhelming, undeniable data. Understanding this definition is crucial for exploring the specific claims and theories put forth by those who believe our past is far richer and more complex than currently understood. The nature of lostness can vary. Some civilizations might be completely lost, with no clear historical or mythological records, known only through a few enigmatic archaeological finds. Others might be lost in the sense that their existence is hinted at in ancient texts or oral traditions, but their physical remains have yet to be definitively found or recognized. For example, the legendary city of Troy was long considered purely mythical until archaeological excavation in the 19th century identified a site that matched the descriptions, albeit with layers of different settlements. However, even with Troy, the level of civilization described in epic poems like the Iliad still differs from the archaeological findings. For the truly lost civilizations within forbidden archaeology, the gap between the purported sophistication and the scarcity of concrete, undeniable evidence is far wider. Another aspect of defining lost worlds involves considering the scale of their purported influence. Are we talking about isolated advanced communities or vast empires that spanned continents? The claims made about lost civilizations by forbidden archaeology often lean towards the latter, suggesting global networks of advanced peoples, or at least highly sophisticated cultures with significant reach. This contrasts sharply with the mainstream view of early human history, which sees smaller, more isolated groups developing independently, with major cultural diffusion occurring much later. The scale of the proposed lost worlds directly impacts the amount and type of evidence that would be required to prove their existence, making the task for proponents of forbidden archaeology even more challenging. If a global civilization existed, one would expect widespread, consistent evidence across multiple continents, which is generally not found in the archaeological record as interpreted by mainstream scholars. The definition of advanced is also critical and often debated. What constitutes advanced for 10,000 years ago? Is it simply the ability to build large structures, or does it imply a mastery of scientific principles like astronomy, mathematics, and complex engineering that rivals or even surpasses later historical civilizations? Forbidden archaeology often suggests a level of advancement that implies a complete departure from the widely accepted Stone Age technological capabilities, sometimes hinting at knowledge that was only rediscovered in much later historical periods, or even in modern times. This can include advanced construction techniques that seem to defy simple tools, knowledge of global geography before documented exploration, or understanding of celestial mechanics that would require sophisticated observation and calculation. The bar for advancement is set high because it is the degree of advancement, coupled with the Great Age, that makes these civilizations forbidden to mainstream timelines. The absence of a continuous, clear archaeological record is a major hurdle for lost civilization theories. Archaeological sites typically build upon previous layers, showing a progression or change over time. When a site is found to be very old, but shows a sudden burst of complexity with no clear precursors, it immediately raises questions for mainstream archaeology. Proponents of lost civilizations might interpret such findings as evidence of a seed from a lost older culture, or a re-emergence of knowledge that was suppressed or forgotten. Mainstream scholars, however, would usually seek to find the developmental stages that led to that complexity, even if they are currently undiscovered. The lack of these transitional forms makes it difficult to integrate a lost civilization into the accepted narrative of human development. The very concept of a lost civilization also implies a mechanism of loss so thorough that it virtually erased its presence. This often leads to theories involving extreme environmental catastrophes or a conscious effort to conceal knowledge. If a civilization were merely forgotten, some traces of its memory might persist even if distorted. But to be truly lost to the extent that its existence is denied or heavily debated by modern science suggests a profound historical discontinuity. This discontinuity is a central point of fascination for forbidden archaeology, which seeks to identify the cause and extent of such an historical gap. It asks why, if these civilizations were so advanced, did they disappear so completely? And why has their memory been almost entirely eradicated from the collective human consciousness, save for tantalizing hints? Finally, the debate over lost civilizations touches upon fundamental questions about human potential and the nature of history. Are humans inherently progressive, always moving forward, or are there cycles of rise and fall, periods of high achievement followed by decline, with knowledge being gained and lost repeatedly? The conventional view of history generally leans towards a progressive model, with technological and social complexity gradually increasing over time. The concept of lost civilizations challenges this linear progression, suggesting a more complex, perhaps cyclical view of human development. This philosophical underpinning is a significant part of why the topic of lost civilizations, though often lacking definitive proof, continues to capture the imagination of many and fuels the ongoing inquiries of forbidden archaeology. It asks us to consider if our understanding of our own past is incomplete, and whether the true story of humanity's journey on Earth is far grander and more mysterious than currently depicted in our textbooks. The accepted understanding of human history traces a deliberate and largely gradual path of development, from the earliest hominids, through various stages of the Stone Age, to the emergence of anatomically modern humans. The story is one of incremental progress. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, making simple stone tools. Around 40,000 to 50,000 years ago, the Upper Paleolithic period in Europe saw an explosion of symbolic thought, expressed in cave art and finely crafted tools. The truly transformative shift, according to this view, occurred much later, with the advent of agriculture around 12,000 years ago, leading to settled communities, population growth, and eventually the first city-states and civilizations in places like Mesopotamia and Egypt, roughly 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. This timeline, supported by extensive archaeological evidence, genetic studies, and dating methods, forms the bedrock of our understanding of human past. It paints a picture of a species slowly but steadily evolving in its technology, social complexity, and cognitive abilities. However, this widely accepted narrative faces challenges from a variety of archaeological discoveries and interpretations that do not fit neatly into its established timeline. This is what is known as the Old Age problem. It refers to the presence of sites, artifacts, or evidence of human activity that appear to be significantly older than conventional theories allow. These findings suggest that either human beings were present in certain regions far earlier than believed, or that they possessed advanced technological or cognitive capabilities at a time when, according to the standard model, they should have been far more primitive. The problem arises because these anomalies question the slow, steady progression of human development, implying bursts of unexpected advancement, or even a non-linear path where knowledge and skills might have been gained, lost, and rediscovered over vast stretches of time. The very existence of such findings forces a re-evaluation of fundamental assumptions about humanity's long journey. The methods used to date archaeological finds are generally robust, but they are not without limitations or areas of debate, especially when confronted with anomalous results. Radiocarbon dating, for instance, measures the decay of carbon-14 in organic materials and is accurate for samples up to about 50,000 years old. Beyond this, other methods like potassium-argon dating or argon-argon dating are used for much older volcanic rocks, providing dates for geological layers in which artifacts might be found. Thermoluminescence dating measures the light emitted from heated minerals and can be used on burnt flint or pottery. Optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, measures the last time sediments were exposed to sunlight. While these techniques are powerful, their accuracy depends on the integrity of the sample, the context in which it was found, and the absence of contamination or disturbance over millennia. When a date from one of these methods produces an age far outside the expected range for human presence or specific technologies, it is almost always met with intense scrutiny. Researchers might question if the sample was contaminated, if the layer was disturbed, or if the interpretation of the geological context is flawed. This critical approach is a fundamental part of scientific rigor, but it can also lead to the dismissal of genuine anomalies that challenge existing paradigms. One of the most persistent Old Age problems concerns the peopling of the Americas, For decades, the widely accepted Clovis first model proposed that the first humans entered North America from Asia across a land bridge, Beringia, around 13,000 years ago, spreading rapidly across the continents. The distinctive Clovis fluted spear points were seen as the earliest clear evidence of human presence. However, archaeological discoveries over the last few decades have seriously challenged this view. One of the most significant is the Monteverde site in Chile. Excavated extensively in the 1970s and 1980s, this site yielded remarkably preserved organic materials, including wooden tools, mastodon bones, and plant remains, dating back approximately 14,500 years. Its dating and context were rigorously examined and debated for many years by a committee of leading archaeologists, eventually gaining widespread acceptance in the late 1990s. The presence of such a well-established site in South America at a time when the Clovis people were supposedly just entering North America suggests a much earlier migration, or multiple migrations, possibly along a Pacific coastal route, predating the opening of an ice-free corridor. Further north, other sites have presented similar challenges. The Buttermilk Creek complex in central Texas has yielded thousands of stone tools and flakes beneath Clovis layers, with optical luminescence dating suggesting an age of approximately 15,500 years. This site provides strong evidence for a pre-Clovis presence in North America. Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania, excavated in the 1970s, also presented evidence of human occupation dating back between 16,000 and 19,000 years ago, based on radiocarbon dates from organic material and the presence of tools distinct from Clovis. While Monteverde's acceptance was a turning point, Meadowcroft still faces some skepticism, primarily due to concerns about the potential for groundwater contamination affecting the radiocarbon dates, illustrating the high bar for evidence when challenging established timelines. These sites, and others like them, cumulatively push back the accepted date for human entry into the Americas by several thousand years, indicating a more complex and earlier dispersal than previously imagined. A far more controversial and much older claim for human presence in the Americas comes from the Curuti Mastodon site in Southern California. In 2017, researchers announced evidence of mastodon bones, dating to approximately 130,000 years ago, that appeared to have been deliberately fractured by early hominids using stone tools. The evidence included specific patterns of bone breakage, hammerstones, and anvils found in association with the bones. If proven, this would push back the arrival of hominids in the Americas by more than 100,000 years, implying a much earlier species, perhaps Homo erectus or Neanderthals, made the journey across the Pacific. However, this claim is highly controversial and has been met with significant skepticism from the mainstream archaeological community. Critics argue that the bone breakage patterns could be due to natural geological processes and the tools could be natural rocks, emphasizing the need for much stronger and unambiguous evidence to support such a radical claim that would completely overturn current understanding of human migration. The debate around this site highlights the extreme difficulty in proving very ancient human activity from limited, potentially ambiguous evidence. Beyond human presence, the old age problem also arises with artifacts that suggest advanced technology or craftsmanship far too early for their conventional historical placement. The Ica stones from Peru are a prominent example. These thousands of engraved andesite stones ranging in size depict a variety of scenes, including dinosaurs, advanced medical procedures like brain surgery and organ transplants, global maps, and what appear to be ancient flying machines. While their proponents claim they are evidence of a lost, highly advanced civilization that coexisted with dinosaurs or developed sophisticated medical knowledge, mainstream archaeology regards them as modern hoaxes. The primary reason for this dismissal is the lack of any verified archaeological context for their discovery. They were mostly collected by a local doctor from grave robbers. Additionally, the depiction of dinosaurs alongside humans directly contradicts geological and paleontological evidence for the extinction of dinosaurs millions of years before humans appeared. Despite the intriguing imagery, the scientific consensus is that they are not authentic ancient artifacts. Similarly, the Acambaro figures from Mexico present another enigma. Thousands of clay figurines, depicting a wide range of animals including what appear to be dinosaurs, as well as strange human-animal hybrids, were purportedly discovered in the 1940s by Waldemar Julsrud. Radiocarbons dating on associated organic material yielded dates ranging from 2,500 to 6,500 years ago. If authentic, these figures would suggest human coexistence with dinosaurs in ancient Mexico, a concept entirely at odds with the fossil record. However, mainstream archaeology rejects the authenticity of the figures. Concerns include the sheer number of highly varied figurines, their inconsistent stylistic features, and the lack of proper archaeological excavation and documentation for most of the finds. Critics suggest they are an elaborate modern fabrication, likely created by local people for sale. Like the Ica stones, their imagery, while captivating, lacks the rigorous archaeological context and scientific verification required for acceptance. Other out-of-place metallic objects also fuel the old age problem. The Coso artifact found in California in 1961 was initially thought to be a modern spark plug encased in a geode, implying it had been formed over 500,000 years. Subsequent analysis, however, revealed it to be a more complex object likely composed of ceramic and copper, consistent with a spark plug. Mainstream geologists and archaeologists concluded it was likely a modern spark plug, perhaps from a 19th or early 20th century mining operation that had become encrusted in a rapidly forming iron oxide concretion rather than an ancient artifact. The geode was in fact a lump of hardened clay, not a geological formation that takes millions of years to create. The metallic spheres from Klerksdorp, South Africa, found in pyrophyllite deposits, are often cited as evidence of ancient technology. These small, perfectly spherical objects, some with parallel grooves, are found in rock strata dated to approximately 2.8 billion years ago. Proponents of forbidden archaeology suggest they are artificially made. However, geologists classify them as naturally occurring concretions, which are compact masses of mineral matter formed by precipitation within sediments. They are common in sedimentary rocks and can take on various shapes, including spheres, and can have natural grooves or rings from their formation process. Their perfect spherical shape is attributed to natural geological forces, not intelligent design. The London Hammer, also known as the London Artifact, found near London, Texas, in 1936, is another such example. It consists of an iron hammer with a wooden handle partially encased in what appears to be Cretaceous rock, dated by some proponents to over 100 million years old. This would imply advanced human metalworking existed during the age of dinosaurs. However, geological analysis by mainstream scientists suggests the rock encasing the hammer is a relatively recent concretion formed around the hammer itself, rather than being part of ancient geological strata. Water-soluble minerals can rapidly form hard concretions around objects in suitable conditions, giving the appearance of extreme age. The hammer itself appears to be a common 19th century mining hammer. Thus, the context and formation of the surrounding material are explained by natural processes acting on a modern object. Beyond artifacts, the old age problem also encompasses evidence for surprisingly early complex symbolic thought or artistic expression. While the cave paintings of Lascaux, Altamira, and Chauvet caves, dating back tens of thousands of years, are well-established examples of sophisticated Paleolithic art, certain discoveries push the timeline for complex cognition even further back. Blombos Cave in South Africa has yielded significant findings, including engraved ochre pieces, shell beads, and sophisticated bone tools, some dating back as far as 100,000 years ago. The ochre engravings show deliberate geometric patterns, interpreted by some as abstract symbolic expression, challenging the idea that such cognitive abilities only emerged much later or primarily in Europe. The perforated shell beads are seen as early evidence of personal adornment and symbolic communication. These discoveries suggest that modern human cognitive capacities, including abstract thought and symbolic behaviour, may have developed much earlier in Africa than previously thought, altering the timeline for the evolution of the human mind. While these are broadly accepted within mainstream archaeology, they continually refine our understanding of early human capabilities, pushing the boundaries of what was once considered primitive. Architectural and engineering feats also present the old age problem. Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey is a prime example. Discovered in the mid-1990s, this site features monumental stone enclosures with massive, intricately carved T-shaped pillars, some weighing tens of tons. Radiocarbon dating places its construction between roughly 11,500 and 10,000 years ago, making it thousands of years older than Stonehenge and the earliest known megalithic structures. Crucially, Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers, predating the development of settled agricultural societies, which were traditionally thought to be a prerequisite for organised labour and monumental construction. Its existence challenges the long-held view that complex religious or social structures and the ability to organise large-scale building projects only arose after humanity transitioned from nomadic foraging to settled farming. Göbekli Tepe forces a re-evaluation of the origins of civilization itself, suggesting that organised religion or ritual may have preceded agriculture, rather than being a consequence of it. It remains a site of immense significance, rewriting major chapters of prehistory. Underwater structures present another category of old age problem. The Oniguni Monument off the coast of Japan is a submerged rock formation with flat surfaces, sharp angles, and what appear to be steps and terraces, leading some to believe it is an ancient artificial structure or a natural formation modified by humans. Proponents suggest it could be 8,000 to 10,000 years old, submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. However, mainstream geologists argue that the formations are natural, resulting from tectonic activity and erosion along natural fault lines in the sandstone. They point to similar natural formations found elsewhere in the region. The debate centres on whether the observed features are too regular and geometric to be purely natural, or if human intervention is necessary to explain them. The Bimini Road, a linear arrangement of large rectangular limestone blocks off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, is another such contested site. Some interpret it as the remnants of an ancient wall or road, perhaps part of the mythical Atlantis, dating back as far as 12,000 years ago when sea levels were much lower. However, most geologists consider it a natural beach rock formation, where limestone sand and shell fragments solidify into rock in intertidal zones, often forming linear patterns due to wave action and erosion. The uniform appearance of the blocks is attributed to natural jointing and fracturing. These sites, whether the subject of ongoing debate or outright dismissal, collectively highlight the old age problem by challenging the notion of a simple linear progression of human development. The standard model suggests that technology and social complexity advance slowly, with major breakthroughs occurring at specific, identifiable points in time. The findings that constitute the old age problem, however, suggest a more complex picture. They imply that humans might have achieved unexpected levels of sophistication at much earlier dates, sometimes in isolation, or that these achievements were part of larger, now lost cultural traditions that existed before the universally recognized cradle of civilizations. The possibility of advanced knowledge being lost due to cataclysms, societal collapse, or simply the passage of immense amounts of time also looms large in these discussions. It questions whether humanity's story is one of continuous ascent, or if there have been cycles of advancement and decline, with previous high points simply erased from the archaeological record as it is currently interpreted. The resistance to many of these old age problem claims from mainstream science is multifaceted. Firstly, there is scientific conservatism. New claims that drastically alter established paradigms require an exceptionally high level of undeniable evidence. Archaeologists are trained to be skeptical and to prioritize rigorous methodologies, clear context, and reproducible results. Many of the old age claims, while intriguing, often lack one or more of these crucial elements to the satisfaction of the broader scientific community. Methodological concerns are frequently raised. For instance, the dating of a site or artifact might be questioned due to potential contamination, geological disturbance of layers, or the misidentification of natural objects as human artifacts. Without definitive proof that eliminates all conventional explanations, mainstream science typically defaults to the most parsimonious, or simplest, explanation that fits within existing knowledge. Furthermore, paradigm resistance is a powerful factor. The current understanding of human history has been built over centuries of research, involving countless excavations, discoveries, and theoretical developments. Overturning such a deeply entrenched framework would require a monumental amount of compelling, unambiguous evidence that cannot be explained by any other means. Academics have invested careers in this framework, textbooks are written, and university curricula are structured around it. The inertia of such a large intellectual enterprise means that radical new ideas face an uphill battle for acceptance. There is also the issue of replication and independent verification. Many old-age problem sites or artifacts are unique finds, or their initial discoveries have not been independently replicated under controlled archaeological conditions. Without consistent repeated findings from multiple independent sources, skepticism remains high. The impact of the old age problem on our understanding of human development, even if most of its more extreme claims remain unproven, is significant. It continually forces archaeologists and historians to re-examine their assumptions. For instance, the acceptance of Monteverde compelled a rethinking of the peopling of the Americas. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe dramatically shifted ideas about the origins of complex societies and monumental architecture. These examples demonstrate that the timeline of human history is not fixed, but is constantly being refined and at times drastically altered by new, rigorously validated evidence. If some of the more radical old age claims were ever definitively proven, it would necessitate a complete rewriting of human origins, migration routes, the timeline of cognitive and technological development, and even the very definition of civilization and its earliest emergence. It would force us to consider a world where ancient humans were far more capable than currently believed, a world that might have been repeatedly shaped by catastrophic events that wiped out entire epochs of human achievement. The old age problem therefore remains a vital, albeit controversial area of inquiry, pushing the boundaries of our historical knowledge and reminding us that the deep past still holds many profound secrets yet to be uncovered. It is a constant reminder that our current understanding is a snapshot subject to revision as new evidence comes to light. The Earth is a dynamic planet, and its surface has changed dramatically over millions of years. One of the most significant changes relevant to the idea of lost civilizations is the fluctuation of sea levels. During the last ice age, which ended roughly 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, vast quantities of water were locked up in immense ice sheets covering large parts of the continents. This led to global sea levels being significantly lower than they are today, by as much as 300 to 400 feet in some areas. As the Earth warmed and the ice sheets melted, sea levels rose rapidly, flooding vast coastal plains and river valleys that were once dry land. This natural process means that any human settlements located on these coastal areas during the Ice Age would now be submerged under the ocean. The possibility that advanced civilizations could have existed on these now submerged landmasses, particularly those that predate the accepted timeline of civilization, forms the core of discussions around watery secrets in forbidden archaeology. The premise is that if highly developed societies existed 10,000, 20,000, or even more years ago before the peak of the last ice age or its rapid melting phase, their cities and structures would now lie hidden beneath the waves. Mainstream archaeology acknowledges the existence of submerged prehistoric sites, but these are typically small settlements of hunter-gatherers or early farming communities, consistent with the expected level of human development for those periods. What forbidden archaeology explores are structures or patterns on the seabed that suggest much more sophisticated engineering, pointing to builders with a higher level of organization and technology than generally attributed to the deep past. The challenges in exploring these underwater environments are immense, involving deep water, strong currents, and the difficulty of distinguishing natural geological formations from human-made structures. One of the most widely discussed underwater anomalies is the Yonaguni Monument, located off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan. Discovered by a diver in 1985, it is a massive, multi-layered rock formation, with features that proponents claim are too regular and geometric to be entirely natural. The structure includes flat terraces, straight walls, 90-degree angles, parallel lines, distinct steps, and pillar-like formations. Some features even appear to be carved with precision, suggesting the use of tools. Proponents, most notably marine geologist Masaki Kimura, argue that its consistent orientation, including what appear to be pathways, roads, and even what some interpret as a gate or arch, points strongly to human design. Kimura also suggests the presence of what he calls turtle-shaped and animal-shaped rocks, implying intentional shaping of the stone. He estimates its age to be at least 10,000 years old, based on its submersion due to rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, possibly even much older. This would make it one of the oldest and largest structures known, far predating the accepted timeline for such complex construction. However, mainstream geologists, including Robert Schoch, a professor of geology at Boston University, argue that the Yonaguni Monument is a natural geological formation. They explain that the island is prone to earthquakes and lies in an area with unique geological features. The formation is composed of sandstone, which naturally fractures along distinct straight fault lines and bedding planes. Over long periods, these natural fractures, combined with erosion from currents and seismic activity, can create surprisingly regular and angular shapes that mimic human design. Schoch points out that many of the supposed features, such as the straight lines and flat surfaces, are common in natural rock formations that have undergone weathering and fracturing. He argues that there is no clear evidence of tool marks or construction methods that would differentiate it from a natural geological process. Furthermore, no artifacts that would clearly identify it as a human settlement, such as tools, pottery, or evidence of daily life, have been found definitively within the structure itself. The debate thus hinges on interpretation. Is the regularity of the formation a result of natural forces acting on specific rock types, or does it require an explanation involving deliberate human engineering on a massive scale at an incredibly ancient date? Another famous underwater enigma is the Bimini Road, located off North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. Discovered in 1968, it consists of a linear arrangement of large, rectangular and relatively flat limestone blocks, extending for several hundred feet in shallow water. The blocks, some weighing several tons, appear to be laid out in a straight line, resembling a paved road or wall. Proponents argue that the consistent size, shape and placement of the blocks are too regular to be purely natural, suggesting ancient human construction. The idea gained significant attention due to its association with the prophecies of Edgar Cayce, an American psychic who predicted the rediscovery of parts of Atlantis in the Bimini area in 1968. If the Bimini Road were artificial, its submergence would suggest an age of at least 12,000 years, when sea levels were low enough for it to be on dry land. Mainstream geologists, however, widely regard the Bimini Road as a natural geological formation known as beach rock. Beach rock forms when sand, shells and other sediments on a beach become cemented together by calcium carbonate, often in the intertidal zone. Over time, as sea levels fluctuate, this beach rock can become exposed, eroded and then submerged. Geologists argue that the seemingly rectangular shapes of the blocks are a result of natural jointing and fracturing that commonly occur in beach rock, particularly along existing stress lines. The linear arrangement can be explained by natural processes of wave action, current erosion, and the way beach rock forms in parallel bands along ancient shorelines. Research by geologists like Eugene Shin has presented evidence of similar natural formations in other parts of the world. Just as with Yonaguni, the absence of any clearly identifiable human artifacts within or directly associated with the structure, such as tools, pottery fragments, or other signs of occupation, further supports the natural explanation for mainstream science. The controversy highlights the challenge of differentiating between patterns created by geological forces and those resulting from intelligent design, especially when dealing with structures that could be many thousands of years old. Beyond these highly debated sites, other claims of submerged cities continue to emerge. One notable example is the alleged discovery of an ancient city in the Gulf of Kambat, also known as the Gulf of Cambay, off the western coast of India. In 2001, Indian oceanographers conducting a pollution study using sonar detected what appeared to be geometrical structures and grid-like patterns on the seabed at a depth of about 120 feet. Subsequent surveys claimed to have found artifacts, including pottery shards, beads, and pieces of wood, which were dated by carbon-14 to around 9,500 years ago. Proponents suggested this was evidence of a vast ancient city, submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, pushing back the timeline of urban civilization in India by several thousand years. This would make it significantly older than the Indus Valley Civilization, currently accepted as the earliest urban culture in the region. However, The claims from the Gulf of Kambat have also been met with considerable skepticism. Critics from the archaeological community raise concerns about the methodology of the discovery and the interpretation of the sonar data, arguing that the structures could be natural geological features resulting from sediment erosion. The artifacts, particularly the pieces of wood, were found by dredging, not in a controlled archaeological excavation. This means their direct association with any supposed city structures is unproven, and they could have been deposited there naturally or by later activity. The carbon dating of a single piece of wood, while providing an ancient date, does not automatically prove the existence of an advanced city at that time. Mainstream archaeologists stress the need for rigorous, controlled underwater excavation to verify the existence and nature of any structures and to confirm the association of artifacts with them, a process that has not yet been fully completed to universal satisfaction. Another intriguing but highly speculative claim involves a Cuban megalith, or an alleged submerged city, located at extreme depths off the western coast of Cuba in 2001. A Canadian exploration team using sonar technology reported finding what appeared to be massive symmetrical structures, including what looked like pyramids and other buildings, at depths ranging from 2,000 to 2,500 feet. The team, led by Paulina Zalitsky, a marine engineer, suggested these were remnants of an ancient city, possibly dating back 50,000 years or more. Such a claim would represent an unprecedented discovery, not only due to the extreme age but also the extraordinary depth, which makes direct human exploration impossible with current technology and requires advanced submersible robotics. Mainstream scientific reaction to the Cuban megalith has been highly skeptical. The primary reason for doubt is the lack of any visual confirmation of the structures that clearly demonstrates artificiality. Sonar images can be ambiguous and prone to misinterpretation, especially at such depths. No physical artifacts have been recovered, nor have any independent researchers been able to verify the claims. Geologists suggest that the reported features could easily be natural formations on the ocean floor, perhaps geological fault lines or rock outcrops that coincidentally create regular patterns in sonar scans. The extreme depth also poses significant challenges for any hypothetical builders, implying a technology far beyond any known ancient capabilities if the structures were indeed man-made. Until concrete, unambiguous evidence is presented through rigorous scientific exploration, the Cuban megalith remains in the realm of unverified speculation. While these highly controversial sites capture public imagination, it is important to differentiate them from confirmed submerged archaeological sites. For instance, Doggerland was a vast land bridge that connected Great Britain to continental Europe during the last ice age. As sea levels rose, it became submerged. Archaeological surveys and dredging operations in the North Sea have yielded numerous artifacts, including tools, bones, and even human remains, providing clear evidence of Mesolithic hunter-gatherer presence on this now submerged landscape. This is a proven case of a lost landmass with human activity, though not of a lost civilization in the sense of advanced urban centres. Similarly, ancient cities like Thonis Heracleon and Canopus in Egypt, which were major port cities in the classical world, became submerged due to subsidence and sea level rise over 2,000 years ago. These are real, historically documented cities that now lie underwater, demonstrating that cities can indeed be lost to the sea, though typically in shallower waters and within known historical periods, not in deep time. These examples help illustrate the scientific challenges of definitively identifying and dating truly ancient, pre-Ice Age cities, compared to later, better understood submerged sites. The general challenges of underwater archaeology make definitive conclusions about watery secrets particularly difficult. Firstly, access and survey are incredibly difficult and costly. Deep water requires specialized submersibles and remote sensing technology. Visibility is often poor, and strong currents can obscure sites and make detailed work challenging. Secondly, distinguishing natural formations from artificial ones on the seabed is a constant hurdle. Geological processes like erosion, fracturing, and sedimentation can create surprisingly regular patterns that mimic human construction. Without clear tool marks, building materials, or associated artifacts, it is almost impossible for mainstream archaeologists to definitively declare a structure man-made. Thirdly, preservation issues are significant. organic materials often decay, and stone structures are subject to erosion, biological incrustation, and geological movement over thousands of years, further obscuring their original form. Finally, dating these sites without clear cultural context or datable organic material is a major problem. Carbon dating requires organic samples, and without clear evidence that these samples are directly associated with the supposed structures and not just random deposits, their age cannot be definitively linked to a hypothetical civilization. The standard for proving extraordinary claims is very high, and for many of these watery secrets, the evidence has not yet met that standard for widespread scientific acceptance. The legend of Atlantis, a powerful narrative of a lost, advanced maritime civilization, often fuels the search for these underwater sites, but this desire can sometimes influence interpretation of ambiguous evidence, making objective scientific assessment even more critical. Humanity has a long history of monumental construction, building structures that awe and inspire across millennia. From the pyramids of Egypt to the Roman Colosseum, the impressive scale of ancient architecture stands as a testament to human ingenuity and organizational capabilities. However, a particular category of ancient structures, often referred to as giants in stone, due to the immense size of their individual components, poses significant questions for mainstream understanding of ancient engineering and the capabilities of early humans. These megalithic constructions, built with massive, perfectly fitted stones, sometimes without mortar, seem to defy the known technological limits of the societies credited with their creation. The mystery often lies not just in their size, but in the precision with which they were cut, transported, and assembled. One of the most enigmatic sites featuring giants in stone is Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon. This site is famous for its colossal Roman temple complex dedicated to Jupiter, Bacchus, and Venus. While the Roman temples themselves are magnificent, the true mystery lies beneath them, in the massive foundation stones of the Jupiter temple. Here, in the western retaining wall, are 3 colossal limestone blocks known as the Trilithon. Each of these blocks is approximately 63 to 65 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet thick, with an estimated weight of over 700 tons each. Their precise fitting, with razor-thin gaps between them, is astonishing. Nearby, in a quarry, lie even larger cut stones. One, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, or Hajar al-Hibla, is approximately 69 feet long and weighs around 1,000 tons. More recently, in 2014, an even larger monolith dubbed the Monolith or Southern Stone was discovered in the same quarry, measuring around 63 feet long and estimated to weigh approximately 1,600 tons. The problem with Baalbek is understanding how these immense stones were quarried, transported and lifted into place. Mainstream archaeological theories suggest that the Romans used a combination of ramps, levers, rollers, and a massive labour force to move such heavy stones. For the Trilithon, it is hypothesized that the blocks were moved using a system of earthen ramps built up around the construction site, possibly with hundreds or even thousands of workers pulling ropes. However, direct archaeological evidence for such ramps at Baalbek is limited, and the sheer weight of the stones makes the logistics of their movement and precise placement extremely challenging, even with a vast number of people. Critics of the mainstream explanation argue that known Roman technology and engineering capabilities, while advanced, seem insufficient to explain the handling of stones of this magnitude and the precision of their dry stone fitting, leading to speculation about an earlier unknown civilization with more sophisticated methods. The ancient sites in the Andean highlands of Peru and Bolivia also feature giants in stone that provoke similar questions about ancient engineering. Sacsayhuaman, a vast walled complex on a high plateau above Cusco, Peru, is famous for its massive, irregularly shaped, interlocking limestone blocks. Some of these blocks weigh over 100 tons, and they are fitted together so precisely without mortar that a sheet of paper cannot be inserted between them. This style of construction, known as polygonal masonry, is incredibly earthquake resistant, which is crucial in an active seismic zone. The problem here lies in how these complex multi-sided stones were cut and shaped to fit so perfectly. Mainstream archaeologists suggest that ancient Inca or pre-Inca builders used harder stone tools such as hammerstones made of diorite or basalt, along with sand and water abrasives, to slowly peck, grind, and shape the surfaces. This would have been an incredibly labour-intensive and time-consuming process, requiring immense skill and patience, potentially involving trial and error fitting. Alternative theories propose that the builders possessed some form of lost technology that allowed them to soften the stone or to use high-precision cutting tools unknown to us, enabling such intricate and exact construction on a massive scale. Ollantaytambo, another significant Inca site in the Sacred Valley of Peru, presents similar challenges. Here, large blocks of pink rhyolite, some weighing more than 50 tons, were transported from a distant quarry across a river and up a steep mountainside to the construction site. The terraces and main temple feature carefully cut and fitted blocks. Unfinished quarrying projects show evidence of stone cutting, but the methods for transporting and precisely placing these multi-ton blocks on steep inclines remain a subject of debate. The stones also feature intriguing T-slots and bosses, protrusions on the stone surfaces whose purpose is not fully understood by archaeologists. Perhaps the most perplexing example of giants in stone for its incredible precision is Puma Punku, part of the Tiwanaku complex in Bolivia, near Lake Titicaca. Dating to around 1,500 to 1,000 years ago, according to mainstream archaeology, Puma Punku consists of finely cut andesite and diorite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. What is truly astonishing about Puma Punku is the incredible precision of the cuts, the perfectly flat surfaces, and the modular interlocking H-blocks that appear to be mass-produced. The level of precision, including internal angles and fine grooves, seems almost machine-like. The hardness of the stone, diorite, which is nearly as hard as granite, makes the achievement even more remarkable, as the builders supposedly lacked iron or steel tools. Mainstream archaeological explanations suggest the use of abrasive sand and obsidian tools, patiently grinding and polishing the stone over long periods. However, critics argue that the level of precision, the exact 90-degree internal corners, and the repeated modular designs seem beyond the capabilities of stone tools and manual labour alone, suggesting the possibility of advanced, lost cutting or machining technology. The site also shows evidence of a sudden, catastrophic destruction, scattering these finely cut blocks across the landscape, leading to theories of a powerful natural event, possibly a great flood that ended the civilization responsible for its creation. Malta also hosts a collection of ancient megalithic temples, such as Hagar Kim and Menajdra, dating back to roughly 5,500 to 4,500 years ago, making them older than the pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge. These temples are constructed from massive limestone blocks, some weighing 20 tons or more, shaped and erected by seemingly primitive island dwellers. The techniques used to quarry, transport, and precisely place these heavy stones, often with curved or concave surfaces, are not fully understood. The underground complex known as the Hypogeum, carved out of solid rock, also features remarkable precision and acoustic properties. While not as overtly challenging as Baalbek or Puma Punku, these Maltese temples demonstrate the widespread capacity of ancient cultures to engage in monumental construction with limited known technology. While Stonehenge in England is widely studied and its construction methods are fairly well understood by mainstream archaeology, involving ramps, ropes, and rollers for moving and erecting stones, some aspects, particularly the transport of the smaller bluestones from over 150 miles away, still inspire questions about the limits of Neolithic technology. It serves as a reminder that even for sites with well-developed theories, the practical execution of such immense tasks by ancient people required extraordinary effort and ingenuity. The Sphinx and its enclosure walls in Egypt also feature massive stone blocks, some weighing up to 200 tons, raising questions about their placement and the erosional patterns on the Sphinx itself, which some argue suggest a much older age, possibly linked to heavy rainfall from a period tens of thousands of years ago, implying an earlier civilization capable of such grand sculptures. The central challenge in understanding these giants in stone is the general lack of explicit written records or detailed archaeological evidence from the builders themselves explaining their construction methods. Without blueprints, instruction manuals, or clearly identifiable tools and construction sites, archaeologists must infer the techniques used based on the available evidence and the known technological capabilities of the period. This leads to theories involving immense manual labour, simple but effective tools, and ingenious applications of basic physics like levers and rollers. However, for the most anomalous sites, the sheer scale, weight, and precision of the stonework, combined with the hardness of the materials used, leave some researchers and observers wondering if our current understanding of ancient human capabilities is incomplete. It forces the question, were ancient humans truly capable of such feats with only simple tools? Or does the evidence point to a greater, lost capacity? Perhaps a different level of understanding of materials and forces? This is the core of the giants in stone problem, challenging the slow, steady progression of human technical ability and organisational skills, suggesting that sophisticated engineering might have existed in the deep past. The scientific understanding of Earth's history is built upon the principles of geology and paleontology, which interpret the planet's past through the study of rocks, landforms, and fossils. The dominant geological paradigm is uniformitarianism, which posits that the same natural processes observed today, such as erosion, sedimentation, and volcanic activity, have operated throughout Earth's history in a largely continuous and gradual manner. This principle, combined with radiometric dating techniques for rocks and the fossil record, has established a timeline stretching back billions of years, charting the evolution of life from simple single-celled organisms to complex multicellular forms and ultimately to humans, within a relatively recent geological timeframe. This framework typically places the emergence of large-scale intelligent life, particularly human civilization, in the last few thousand to tens of thousands of years. However, the concept of Earth before us in forbidden archaeology challenges this established timeline by looking for geological evidence that might support the idea of ancient advanced civilizations existing millions or even billions of years ago. This involves examining unexpected strata, petrified objects, or formations that proponents argue suggest intelligent design in very old rock layers, long before humans or any known intelligent species are believed to have existed. Such findings, if verified, would completely overturn our understanding of Earth's deep past, the timeline of life, and the development of intelligent species. One category of claims involves the discovery of human artifacts or traces deep within geological layers, such as coal seams. Coal is formed from the remains of ancient plant matter, compressed and heated over millions of years. Finding human-made objects within coal seams, therefore, would imply human presence millions of years ago. There have been various reports throughout history of objects like iron tools, chains, or thimbles allegedly found embedded in coal. For example, a gold chain was reportedly found inside a lump of coal in Morrisonville, Illinois, in 1891, and an iron pot was allegedly found in a coal seam in Oklahoma in 1912. These claims are often based on anecdotal evidence, lacking rigorous scientific documentation of their context. Mainstream geologists and archaeologists typically explain such occurrences as modern objects that fell into fissures or cracks in the coal seams at a much later date, becoming encased but not truly formed within the ancient coal itself. Without proper archaeological excavation and dating of the surrounding strata and the object itself, such reports remain unverified and highly questionable. More extreme claims involve discoveries in Precambrian rock, which dates back hundreds of millions to billions of years, long before complex life, let alone humans, existed. The metallic spheres from Klerksdorp, South Africa, mentioned previously in the Old Age Problem chapter, are a key example. These small spherical objects, some with parallel grooves, were found in pyrophyllite deposits dated to approximately 2.8 billion years ago. While proponents suggest artificial manufacture, geologists widely interpret them as naturally occurring concretions. Concretions are masses of mineral matter that form within sedimentary rocks through the precipitation of minerals around a nucleus. They can take various shapes, including perfect spheres, and the grooves can be natural features formed during their growth or subsequent weathering. Similarly, claims of metallic cubes found in a coal mine in Salzburg, Austria, in 1885, or an iron nail found embedded in a sandstone block in Scotland in 1844, have been explained by geologists as natural pyrite cubes, a common mineral, or modern nails that became embedded in relatively recent concretions, not ancient rock. Alleged ancient roads or pavements found in deep geological strata also fall into this category. There have been reports of perfectly straight or patterned pavements found in rock layers millions of years old, interpreted by some as artificial constructions. However, mainstream geology explains these as natural geological phenomena. For example, columnar jointing in volcanic rocks can create hexagonal or polygonal patterns that appear unnaturally regular. Similarly, natural fracturing and erosion of sedimentary rock can create linear or rectangular patterns that resemble paved surfaces. These features are products of tectonic forces, weathering, and the inherent properties of rock types, not ancient engineering. The presence of petrified objects and anomalous fossils also poses challenges to the conventional geological timeline. Petrified human remains or footprints found alongside dinosaur tracks or in geological layers millions of years old would fundamentally alter the understanding of life's history. The most famous case is the Paluxy River in Texas, where some creationists and proponents of forbidden archaeology claim to have found human footprints alongside dinosaur tracks in Cretaceous rock, dated to over 100 million years ago. Mainstream paleontologists and geologists have extensively studied these claims. They conclude that the alleged human footprints are either misidentified dinosaur tracks, natural erosional features in the rock that resemble footprints, or deliberate hoaxes. The scientific consensus is that there is no credible evidence of human footprints coexisting with dinosaur tracks. The process of petrification itself, where organic material is replaced by minerals over vast amounts of time, typically applies to wood or bone. Reports of petrified tools or manufactured items are almost always explained as modern objects encased in relatively rapidly forming concretions, not truly petrified ancient artifacts. More broadly, fossil anomalies that suggest modern-looking organisms in ancient strata, or complex organisms predating their supposed evolutionary emergence, indirectly contribute to the Earth before us idea. If species that should not exist in a certain geological period are found, it challenges the slow, steady progression of evolution. While some such initial reports might turn out to be misidentifications or out-of-context finds, persistent anomalies can lead to revised understandings within paleontology, as new discoveries always refine the evolutionary tree. These are typically resolved within the framework of evolution, rather than pointing to ancient civilizations. Claims of geological formations that suggest intelligent design, rather than being natural, also fall under Earth before us, though often intersecting with the giants in stone idea. The alleged Bosnian pyramids are a prominent example. In 2005, a researcher claimed that a series of hills near Visoko, Bosnia, were in fact ancient man-made pyramids covered by vegetation and soil, possibly dating back tens of thousands of years. Proponents pointed to geometric shapes, precise orientations, and alleged underground tunnel systems as evidence of artificial construction. However, mainstream geologists, archaeologists, and scientists have overwhelmingly concluded that the pyramids are natural hills, known as flatirons or cuestas, which are common geological features formed by erosion of different rock layers. The precise shapes are attributed to natural geological processes and weathering, not human intervention. Scientific excavations have found no evidence of artificial construction materials or techniques, and the purported tunnels are natural cave systems. The idea of vast underground cities, or tunnel networks existing in deep earth, predating known human tunneling capabilities, also ties into this concept. While natural cave systems are extensive and often show signs of ancient human habitation, claims of deliberately engineered planet-spanning or extremely deep networks typically lack verifiable evidence. These notions often involve highly speculative interpretations of geological formations or obscure folklore, rather than tangible archaeological or geological proof. The core of the conflict between Earth before us claims and mainstream geology lies in the differing paradigms of uniformitarianism and catastrophism. Mainstream geology largely adheres to uniformitarianism, which interprets Earth's history as a product of slow, gradual processes over immense time. This view makes the long-term survival of human-made structures, especially delicate ones, in the geological record highly improbable, without very specific and unusual conditions of preservation. The vastness of geological time means that erosion, tectonic forces and metamorphism would typically erase or severely deform any surface structures over millions of years. However, theories of ancient advanced civilizations often rely on catastrophic events, such as global floods, rapid pole shifts, or massive impacts, to explain both their sudden disappearance and the subsequent burial of their remains in geological strata. These events would allow for the rapid burial and preservation of structures that might otherwise be destroyed by gradual processes. The Younger Dryas impact theory, for example, posits a comet impact around 12,900 years ago, causing widespread environmental devastation and a rapid cooling period. While this theory itself is debated within mainstream science, forbidden archaeology often points to such a catastrophic event as a potential reset button for early human civilizations, explaining why evidence of their existence might be buried or fragmented. However, even within catastrophic models, the preservation of complex human structures over millions of years remains a significant challenge for geological principles. The primary reason for the rejection of Earth before us claims by mainstream geology is the overwhelming reliance of geology on natural processes to explain phenomena. Geologists are trained to identify natural explanations for formations, and attributing geological features or objects within ancient strata to intelligent design goes against fundamental geological principles unless direct, undeniable evidence of construction or deliberate shaping is found. The rigorous dating and stratigraphic principles of geology are also paramount. Claims of ancient artifacts in old rock are almost always explained by more mundane phenomena: modern intrusion into older layers, misidentification of natural formations as artifacts, or misinterpretation of geological context. The absence of supporting archaeological evidence from the same periods is also a crucial point. If an ancient civilization existed, one would expect a consistent pattern of geological and archaeological findings, not just isolated anomalies. The deep time involved also makes the preservation of delicate human constructs incredibly unlikely, without massive, sudden burial in very specific, rare conditions. If such geological anomalies were ever definitively proven to be the product of ancient intelligent beings, it would necessitate a radical and profound shift in our understanding of Earth's history, the timeline of life, and the very concept of intelligent existence. It would require rethinking the entire evolutionary narrative, the age of intelligent life on our planet, and potentially even our place in the cosmos. The implications would extend far beyond geology and archaeology, touching upon biology, anthropology, and even philosophy. However, without truly extraordinary and irrefutable evidence that withstands the most rigorous scientific scrutiny, the claims of Earth before us remain in the realm of speculative inquiry, reminding us of the vast mysteries that still lie buried beneath the Earth's surface, and the immense stretches of time about which we still have much to learn. Human civilization's development is often charted through the evolution of its tools, from the earliest chipped stones used by hominids millions of years ago, to the carefully ground and polished tools of the Neolithic era, and then to the mastery of metals with the Copper Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. Each stage represents a measurable increase in human ingenuity and capability. Mainstream archaeology traces a steady progression: basic stone tools, then copper tools that were soft and required constant sharpening, followed by harder bronze tools, and finally the widespread use of iron and steel, which enabled increasingly complex and precise work. This accepted timeline suggests that ancient people worked with technologies appropriate for their period, gradually improving their skills and materials over millennia. However, certain artifacts and examples of ancient craftsmanship challenge this linear view. These objects display an incredible level of precision, intricate detail, or knowledge of materials that appears far beyond what is conventionally attributed to their supposed historical period. These anomalous tools, or examples of precision craftsmanship, are at the heart of questions posed by forbidden archaeology. They imply either that ancient peoples possessed unknown advanced tools, or that they had a far greater understanding of engineering and material science than our current textbooks suggest. The issue is not merely that something difficult was built, but how it was built with the presumed technology and whether the results could truly be achieved by purely manual methods. One of the most compelling areas where this advanced tools problem arises is in the precision stone cutting and drilling observed in ancient Egypt. At the Serapeum in Saqqara, for example, massive granite boxes, some weighing up to 100 tons, are found within underground tunnels. These sarcophagi-like boxes exhibit astonishingly flat surfaces, perfect 90-degree internal and external angles, and incredibly tight-fitting lids. Granite is a very hard igneous rock, ranking between 6 and 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Working with such material to achieve this level of precision with known ancient Egyptian tools, primarily copper chisels, dolerite pounders, and abrasive sand, poses a significant challenge. Mainstream Egyptology explains these feats as the result of immense labour, decades of patient work and skilled artisans using abrasive slurry with copper saws or grinding blocks. However, proponents of alternative theories argue that the geometric perfection and scale of these objects suggest either a lost technology capable of cutting hard stone with machine-like precision, or a different, earlier civilization with superior methods. The crafting of diorite bowls and vases in ancient Egypt also presents similar questions. Diorite is even harder than granite, ranking around 7 on the Mohs scale. Many diorite vessels, some dating to the early dynastic period, over 5,000 years ago, display exquisite internal and external symmetry, remarkably thin walls and highly polished surfaces. Creating these objects, especially hollowing them out and achieving such uniform thickness, would have been exceedingly difficult with only hand-powered drills and abrasive powders. Mainstream explanations involve the use of rotary drills with abrasive sand, possibly driven by bows or hand cranks, combined with grinding and polishing. However, critics wonder if such methods could truly achieve the observed perfection and efficiency, suggesting the possibility of high-speed drilling or more advanced shaping techniques. The helical grooves found in ancient Egyptian drill holes in granite and other hard stones are another point of contention. These grooves, visible in quarry sites and some artifacts, show a consistent pitch and depth, as if created by a powerful rotating drill that cut into the stone at a uniform rate. The implied feed rate, or penetration depth per rotation, seems remarkably high for a simple hand-powered drill using abrasive sand. It suggests a significant amount of downward pressure and rotational force. Mainstream explanations propose that these grooves were created by workers applying increasing pressure to a tube drill with abrasive paste as they rotated it, or by rocking a copper chisel. Alternative theories, however, suggest that these marks indicate the use of machine assistance, perhaps a form of high-speed, high-pressure drilling technology that allowed for rapid and precise removal of hard stone, far beyond the capabilities of human muscle power alone. Moving to the Andes, the precision stonework at Puma Punku in Bolivia, often mentioned in discussions of giants in stone, also strongly supports the advanced tools argument. The blocks at Puma Punku, made of hard andesite and diorite, exhibit incredibly flat planes, sharp internal 90-degree corners, and precise modular interlocking designs, often referred to as H-blocks. The surface finish of these stones is often polished to a mirror-like sheen. The challenge lies in how such precision was achieved by a culture that supposedly lacked iron or steel tools and had only basic knowledge of metallurgy. Andesite and diorite are very hard, ranging from 6 to 7 on the Mohs scale. Mainstream archaeological theories suggest that the fine cuts and polished surfaces were achieved through prolonged abrasion, using harder stones like obsidian, quartzite, or jadeite, along with sand and water. It would have required immense time, patience, and skill. However, proponents of alternative views argue that the microscopic precision, the perfect internal angles, and the apparent standardization of components suggest a level of machining that is simply not possible with primitive tools, hinting at the use of advanced cutting, grinding, or polishing technology, possibly using forms of energy or tools unknown to us. The precise fitting of irregular blocks at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, also previously discussed, further illustrates this problem of precision. The multi-sided, massive stones fit together so perfectly without mortar that even a thin blade cannot be inserted between them. How were these complex convex and concave surfaces created to mate so flawlessly? Mainstream theories rely on persistent pecking, grinding and shaping with stone tools, combined with a meticulous process of trial and error fitting. Some alternative theories suggest techniques like stone softening, where certain plant extracts or unknown chemical processes might have temporarily made the stone malleable, allowing for precise shaping before it hardened again. While no scientific evidence supports stone softening, the observed precision remains a subject of ongoing wonder and debate. Beyond stoneworking, advanced tools claims extend to metallurgical anomalies. The Iron Pillar of Delhi in India, standing over 23 feet tall and weighing more than 6 tons, is a remarkable example of ancient metallurgy. For over 1,600 years, since its supposed erection in the early 5th century CE, it has resisted rust to an astonishing degree, despite being exposed to humid conditions. Its composition, nearly 99.7% pure iron, along with a high phosphorus content, contributes to its rust resistance by forming a protective passivation layer. The problem is how ancient Indian metallurgists, without modern high-temperature furnaces or advanced knowledge of metallurgy, managed to forge such a large, pure iron column. Mainstream metallurgical explanations point to the use of solid-state reduction techniques, hammering hot sponge iron from bloomery furnaces, accumulated over centuries of specialized knowledge and skilled blacksmithing. They suggest the unique properties of the local iron ores contributed to its rust resistance. Alternative theories sometimes propose lost metallurgical secrets or a more advanced understanding of iron working than conventionally believed. Another metallurgical enigma involves platinum artifacts found in pre-Columbian South America, particularly in regions of Ecuador and Colombia. Ancient craftsmen from the La Tolita culture, around 500 BCE to 500 CE, were known to work with platinum, producing small ornaments. Platinum has an extremely high melting point, over 3,200 degrees Fahrenheit, far beyond what could be achieved with conventional ancient furnaces or blowpipes. The problem is how these ancient people worked with a metal that resists melting at temperatures available to them. Mainstream metallurgical analysis indicates they used a technique called sintering or powder metallurgy. This involves mixing platinum grains with gold powder, heating the mixture to a temperature below platinum's melting point, but enough to bond the gold, and then repeatedly hammering and heating the material. This process would compact the platinum grains into a workable alloy. While this explanation is widely accepted, it still represents an incredibly sophisticated understanding of material properties and a high level of technical ingenuity for a society without modern scientific instruments. Some interpretations of ancient iconography also lead to claims of advanced tools or technology. The Dendera-lite relief in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, Egypt is an example. This carving depicts what some interpret as a large bulb-like object with a filament inside, resembling a giant light bulb, supported by a stand and connected to a cable. Proponents suggest this is evidence that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge of electricity. However, mainstream Egyptology firmly dismisses this interpretation. They explain the relief as a mythological representation of a lotus flower from which a snake emerges, symbolizing creation and regeneration in Egyptian cosmology. The filament is the snake, and the cable is the lotus stem. There is no archaeological evidence of electrical devices, wires, or power sources found elsewhere in Egypt to support the light bulb theory. The interpretation of the relief as a technological device is considered a misinterpretation of ancient religious symbolism. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, is perhaps the most astonishing example of advanced tools that is widely accepted by mainstream science, precisely because its complexity is undeniable. Dating to around 2,200 years ago, 1st or 2nd century BCE, this corroded bronze device is an incredibly intricate geared mechanism. Extensive research, including X-ray tomography, has revealed it was a sophisticated astronomical calculator, capable of predicting planetary motions, solar and lunar eclipses, and even calculating Olympic game cycles. Its gears are incredibly precise, some with prime numbers of teeth, indicating advanced mathematical and mechanical knowledge. The problem it presents is not whether it is a hoax or natural, as it is a proven artifact. Instead, The puzzle is why no other devices of comparable complexity were known from the ancient world for over 1,000 years after its creation. It appears as an extraordinary outlier, implying a level of mechanical engineering and astronomical understanding that was either exceptionally rare or whose knowledge was largely lost for centuries. It suggests that bursts of technological brilliance might have occurred independently or were not widely disseminated in ancient times. Another set of controversial artifacts are the crystal skulls, several perfectly formed human skulls carved from clear or milky quartz. Crystal exist in various museum collections around the world. Quartz is a very hard material, ranking 7 on the Mohs scale, making it extremely difficult to carve with anything but diamond or very hard abrasive sand. The precision of the facial features, eye sockets, and teeth on some of the skulls is remarkable. Proponents claim these skulls are ancient artifacts, perhaps thousands of years old, carved by lost civilizations with advanced unknown tools. However, rigorous scientific analyses by the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution in the late 20th century concluded that most, if not all, of the famous crystal skulls were modern forgeries, likely created in the 19th or early 20th centuries using rotary tools with abrasive grit, a technology not available to ancient Mesoamerican cultures to whom they were attributed. These investigations found tool marks that indicate modern manufacturing methods, even on supposedly ancient pieces. This case highlights how some advanced tools' claims turn out to be modern fabrications or misunderstandings. Ultimately, the advanced tools argument posits that the exceptional precision, craftsmanship, and material knowledge evident in certain ancient artifacts challenge the accepted slow, linear progression of technology. While mainstream archaeology often provides plausible explanations based on immense manual labour, ingenious use of simple tools, and patience over long periods, the sheer perfection of some pieces continues to raise questions. For many of these anomalous tools, mainstream skepticism is based on strong arguments: misidentification, misdating, the underestimation of ancient manual labour and patience, or the possibility that specific localized knowledge existed that was subsequently lost rather than widespread advanced technology. When claims of truly impossible tools arise, they are often dismissed as hoaxes or misinterpretations of symbolic art as technical diagrams. Nevertheless, these fascinating artifacts compel us to constantly reevaluate the true capabilities of ancient humans and to consider whether the past held technological secrets that we are only now beginning to ponder. The Giza Plateau in Egypt is home to some of the most iconic and mysterious ancient structures on Earth: the Great Pyramids and the Great Sphinx. Mainstream Egyptology holds a widely accepted consensus regarding these monuments. The 3 main pyramids, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, were built as tombs for pharaohs of the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, roughly 4,500 years ago. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the largest, is believed to have been constructed over a period of 20 to 30 years, utilising a vast labour force, copper tools, and various ramp systems for moving and lifting the immense stone blocks. The Great Sphinx, a colossal statue carved from the bedrock, is generally attributed to Pharaoh Khafre, who ruled after Khufu. This view is supported by archaeological finds of worker villages, tools, quarry marks, and inscriptions found at the Giza site and in other Old Kingdom contexts. However, despite this mainstream consensus, the sheer scale, precision, and architectural complexity of the Giza monuments have led to numerous alternative theories regarding their construction methods, their true age, and their ultimate purpose. These theories often challenge mainstream Egyptology by highlighting unexplained features and by questioning the capabilities of ancient Egyptians with the known technology available to them. The puzzle of Giza lies in the persistent questions that continue to emerge, inspiring researchers and enthusiasts to look beyond conventional explanations. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, also known as the Pyramid of Cheops, is the most massive and perplexing of the structures. Originally standing 481 feet high, it is composed of over 2,300,000 stone blocks. While most blocks weigh between 2.5 and 15 tons, some, particularly the granite blocks in the King's Chamber, weigh up to 70 tons or more. The challenges of its construction are immense and fuel many of the alternative theories. Firstly, the quarrying of these millions of blocks with copper tools presents a significant problem. Copper is a relatively soft metal, with a Mohs hardness of 3, while the limestone used for most of the pyramid blocks ranges from 3 to 4, and the harder granite in the interior ranges from 6 to 7. Mainstream Egyptology suggests that copper chisels, used with great force, could cut limestone, and harder dolerite pounders were used to chip away at granite. Wooden wedges, soaked in water to expand and crack the stone, were also likely used. Alternative theories question whether these methods could efficiently and precisely cut millions of blocks, especially the hard granite, suggesting either a lost form of high-precision cutting technology or methods involving unknown forms of energy that could soften or cut stone more easily. Secondly, the transport of these multi-ton blocks from quarries, some of which were distant, the granite from Aswan, over 500 miles away, poses another massive logistical problem. Mainstream theories propose that the blocks were transported on sledges pulled by large teams of workers, possibly lubricated by water or mud on specially constructed slipways. For river transport, barges would have been used. While feasible for smaller blocks, moving 70-ton granite blocks across land without wheels, which were not commonly used for heavy transport in Old Kingdom Egypt, is a tremendous undertaking. Alternative theories sometimes venture into highly speculative areas, such as claims of levitation or the use of sound energy to reduce the weight of stones, though no scientific evidence supports these notions. Thirdly, the lifting and precise placement of these millions of blocks to such heights, culminating in the pyramid's original 481 feet, is perhaps the greatest challenge. Mainstream Egyptology primarily relies on various ramp systems. Theories include a single, straight ramp that extended for miles, a wraparound spiral ramp on the outside of the pyramid, or combinations of internal and external ramps. However, the sheer volume of material needed for such ramps, and the practical challenges of continually rebuilding them as the pyramid grew, are considerable. A more recent and widely discussed theory by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin proposes an external straight ramp for the first part of the pyramid, leading to an internal spiral ramp that ascended within the pyramid structure, through which the blocks could be moved. This theory attempts to explain the lack of external ramp evidence and accounts for the construction process more plausibly. Despite these theories, the precise method remains a subject of ongoing study and debate, fueling alternative ideas about unknown lifting mechanisms. Finally, the incredible precision of the Great Pyramid challenges the capabilities of ancient builders. Its base is almost perfectly flat, with variations of less than 1 inch across its 755-foot length. It is aligned with astonishing accuracy to the cardinal directions north, south, east, west, within 1/15 of a degree. The casing stones, originally covering the pyramid, were polished white limestone blocks fitted together with incredibly tight seams, often cited as being razor-thin, making it almost impossible to insert anything between them. Mainstream Egyptology attributes this precision to extraordinary skill, meticulous planning, simple yet effective surveying tools like plumb bobs and sighting lines, and decades of dedicated labour. Alternative views argue that this level of geometric and astronomical precision suggests a more advanced understanding of mathematics, surveying and engineering than is typically credited to the 4th Dynasty Egyptians, implying the use of precision instruments or even machine-like capabilities. The Great Sphinx of Giza, a colossal statue approximately 240 feet long and 66 feet high, also contributes significantly to the puzzle of Giza. Mainstream Egyptology attributes its carving from the bedrock to Pharaoh Khafre, placing its age at around 4,500 years old. However, one of the most prominent alternative theories, put forth by geologist Robert Schoch in the early 1990s, challenges this accepted age based on geological evidence. Schoch argued that the erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure walls and the body of the Sphinx itself, characterized by deep vertical fissures and rounded profiles, are consistent with prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall, not wind and sand. Egypt's climate has been hyper-arid for the last 5,000 years. However, before 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, the region experienced a much wetter savanna-like climate. Schoch's geological analysis suggests that the primary erosion on the Sphinx is water-related, implying that the monument must be much older, perhaps dating back to the end of the last ice age, possibly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, or even earlier. If true, this would mean the Sphinx was carved by a sophisticated, unknown civilization that existed thousands of years before the accepted dynastic Egyptians. Mainstream Egyptologists and geologists have countered Schoch's claims, arguing that the erosion patterns could be explained by local water runoff, natural weathering of varying rock hardness, and the effects of ancient and modern repair efforts, including the use of sprinklers for landscaping. They argue that the evidence for water erosion is not conclusive enough to overturn the vast body of archaeological and historical evidence that ties the Sphinx directly to Khafra's reign, including inscriptions, associated statuary, and its position within the Giza complex. The debate remains unresolved, with each side presenting geological and archaeological arguments. Another area of alternative speculation regarding the Sphinx concerns the theory of hidden chambers beneath it. The most famous proponent of this idea was the American psychic Edgar Cayce, who, in his life readings in the early 20th century, spoke of a hall of records containing the history and knowledge of a lost civilization, Atlantis, located beneath the Sphinx. While Cayce's claims are not scientific, they have inspired numerous searches using modern technology. Ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys have been conducted around the Sphinx, detecting various anomalies and subsurface features. Mainstream Egyptology generally interprets these as natural geological formations, or known archaeological features like tombs or tunnels for drainage, asserting that there is no definitive scientific evidence of a large artificial hidden chamber like a hall of records. The internal structures of the Great Pyramid of Khufu also present their own puzzles. Beyond the well-known King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and Grand Gallery, the pyramid contains a complex system of descending and ascending passages. The King's Chamber, constructed entirely of massive granite blocks, is a marvel of precision. The method for cutting and moving these heavy granite blocks and placing them with such exactness continues to be a source of wonder. The so-called air shafts, or star shafts, leading from the King's and Queen's chambers to the exterior of the pyramid have long been debated. Mainstream interpretations suggest they were for ventilation or symbolic pathways for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars. However, their precise alignment, particularly with certain stars in different epochs, has led alternative researchers to propose they were astronomically aligned observation tubes or served a different, unknown functional purpose beyond that of a tomb. Recent robot explorations of these narrow shafts have revealed small doors, or blocking stones with copper handles, indicating unexplored areas within the pyramid that continue to fuel speculation about hidden chambers or passages. The overall purpose of the pyramids, beyond their accepted function as royal tombs, is another major aspect of the puzzle of Giza. While mainstream Egyptology is firm on their funerary role and symbolic representation of the pharaoh's power and divinity, alternative theories propose vastly different purposes. One prominent theory, put forward by engineer Christopher Dunn, suggests that the Great Pyramid was not merely a tomb, but a gigantic machine, specifically a power plant or energy generator. Dunn meticulously analyzes the pyramid's precise dimensions, internal design, and choice of materials, arguing that these features are consistent with a device designed to resonate and convert telluric, earth, energy into microwave energy. He interprets the Grand Gallery as a resonator, the shafts as waveguides, and the Granite King's Chamber as an acoustic chamber. While highly detailed and technically argued, this theory lacks direct archaeological evidence for power generation and is not accepted by mainstream Egyptologists, who find no support for such advanced technology in the Egyptian record. Other alternative theories suggest the pyramids functioned as astronomical observatories or calendars, given their precise alignments. Their immense size and visibility might also have served as a landmark or beacon. Some speculative theories propose them as time capsules, repositories of ancient knowledge, or even part of a global energy grid constructed by an unknown, highly advanced civilization. These ideas often arise from the observation that the Great Pyramid, unlike other Egyptian tombs, was found largely empty, lacking a mummy or the rich funerary goods typically associated with pharaohs of its era. This absence, while explained by mainstream Egyptology as a result of ancient tomb robberies, allows alternative theories to postulate non-funerary purposes, Mainstream Egyptology firmly counters these alternative theories by emphasizing the extensive archaeological and historical evidence supporting the 4th Dynasty construction. Thousands of papyrus fragments detailing the daily lives of pyramid workers, their diets, and their organization have been found, offering a glimpse into the logistics of the monumental undertaking. Quarry marks and graffiti left by work gangs have been identified on many pyramid blocks. Furthermore, experimental archaeology has involved attempts to replicate ancient Egyptian construction methods, providing plausible explanations for how the pyramids could have been built with the known technology and a massive workforce. Mainstream scholars dismiss most alternative theories as lacking concrete evidence, misinterpreting data, or making extraordinary claims without sufficient proof. They often invoke Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best, favouring explanations that fit within the established historical and archaeological record. Despite the comprehensive mainstream explanations, the puzzle of Giza endures. The sheer scale, the astonishing precision, and the remarkable longevity of the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx continue to inspire questions that push the boundaries of conventional understanding. Whether it is the mystery of how millions of multi-ton blocks were quarried and lifted, the geological evidence for a much older Sphinx, or the intriguing internal design of the Great Pyramid that hints at a purpose beyond a mere tomb, Giza remains a focal point for those who believe that humanity's past holds secrets that have yet to be fully uncovered. It serves as a powerful symbol of what ancient humans were capable of, and perhaps a reminder that our current understanding of their knowledge and abilities might still be incomplete. The history of cartography, or map making, is conventionally understood as a progressive journey, from rudimentary drawings on clay tablets to the highly detailed and accurate global maps of the modern era. Early maps, from ancient Babylonian clay maps of local regions to Ptolemy's world, maps of the 2nd century CE, were often based on limited direct observation, travellers' accounts, and astronomical calculations. The true breakthrough in global mapping is generally attributed to the Age of Exploration, beginning in the 15th century, when European navigators embarked on voyages of discovery, gradually charting the continents. The development of accurate methods for determining longitude, such as the marine chronometer in the 18th century, revolutionized cartography, allowing for truly precise global representation. Before these advancements, it was considered impossible to create accurate world maps, particularly those depicting unknown continents like Antarctica, with anything approaching their true shape and features. However, a fascinating category of ancient and medieval maps exists that appears to challenge this conventional timeline. These anomalous ancient maps seem to show detailed knowledge of continents or geographical features that were supposedly unknown or inaccurately charted at the time the maps were drawn. Proponents of forbidden archaeology suggest these maps hint at a lost global mapping ability, possibly derived from an unknown, highly advanced civilization that existed in the distant past. The maps are often interpreted as copies of much older, more accurate source maps, with the inaccuracies being attributed to the errors introduced during the copying process by later, less knowledgeable cartographers. One of the most famous and debated of these maps is the Piri Reis map. Discovered in 1929 in the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul, Turkey, it was drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis. The map fragment shows parts of the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and, most controversially, a southern landmass that some claim represents the coastline of Antarctica. The striking aspect of this alleged Antarctic depiction is that it appears to show features that are now buried under the vast ice sheet of Antarctica, implying that it was mapped before the continent became fully covered by ice. This would place the original source map at least 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, if not earlier, during or before the end of the last ice age. Charles Hapgood, a professor of history, famously proposed in the 1960s that the Piri Reis map, along with others, was based on source maps from a highly advanced pre-Ice Age civilization that possessed global mapping capabilities. He argued that the apparent landmass corresponds to the Queen Maud Land area of Antarctica, showing details that would only be visible if the ice sheet had not yet formed or had melted away. Mainstream cartographers and geographers offer several counter-arguments regarding the Piri Reis map's Antarctic depiction. They contend that the southern landmass on the map is likely not Antarctica at all, but rather an extension of the South American coastline that curves sharply eastward, a common distortion on early maps due to the challenges of accurately representing a sphere on a flat surface without precise longitude measurements. Another interpretation is that it represents the hypothetical Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land that many cartographers of the time speculated existed to balance the land masses of the northern hemisphere. Such a landmass was often drawn without any direct knowledge, based purely on philosophical or theoretical reasoning. Furthermore, critics point out that the Piri Reis map contains significant distortions and inaccuracies in other well-known regions, such as the Caribbean islands and parts of the South American coast. These widespread inaccuracies are inconsistent with the idea of it being derived from truly accurate ancient global mapping. While Piri Reis himself stated he compiled the map from older sources, including some drawn in the time of Alexander the Great, mainstream historians suggest these older sources were likely earlier medieval or Islamic maps, not secret pre-Ice Age global surveys. The map's alleged accurate longitudes are also subject to debate, as early maps often had substantial errors in longitudinal placement due to the lack of a reliable method for determining longitude at sea until the 18th century. Another map often cited in discussions of lost ancient knowledge is the Orontius Phineus map, or Oronce Phiné's world map, drawn in 1531. This map also depicts a large southern continent, strikingly similar in its general shape to modern Antarctica, complete with rivers, mountains, and coastal features, suggesting an ice-free land. Proponents argue that such a detailed depiction of an ice-free Antarctica, complete with interior drainage systems, would have been impossible for a 16th century cartographer without access to ancient, highly accurate source maps from a time when Antarctica was not covered by its current massive ice sheet. This would push the date of the original survey back by thousands of years. However, mainstream cartographic analysis of the Orontius Phineus map also points to alternative explanations. The presence of a southern continent on maps of this era was a common feature of the European cartographic tradition. It was a theoretical landmass, Terra Australis Incognita, drawn to balance the northern hemisphere's continents. While the general outline might bear a superficial resemblance to Antarctica, the specific interior features such as rivers and mountains are entirely speculative and do not correspond to what is known about the continent's geology or geography beneath the ice. The placement of this southern continent relative to other landmasses on the Orontius Phineus map is also inaccurate. Mainstream scholars argue that the map is a product of its time's geographical theories and artistic license, with its apparent accuracy being coincidental or exaggerated, rather than evidence of a secret ancient survey. There is no independent evidence from the 16th century or earlier to suggest that Phiné had access to or knowledge of such advanced surveying data. The Zeno map, published in 1558 by Niccolo Zeno, purportedly based on voyages undertaken by his ancestors in the late 14th century, also raises questions. This map shows parts of the North Atlantic, including lands like Freyland, Engroneland, Greenland, and a mysterious Estotaland, which some speculate could be part of North America. Proponents suggest that certain features on the Zeno map, particularly its depiction of Greenland's coastline, appear to show details of the land beneath its ice cap, implying a survey from a much earlier period when Greenland was less glaciated. Mainstream historical and cartographic research largely regards the Zeno map as a fabrication or a compilation based on highly confused and inaccurate information. Freeland is now widely considered a ghost island, a cartographic error that persisted for some time. The alleged resemblance to a deglaciated Greenland is superficial and not supported by detailed analysis. The map contains numerous obvious inaccuracies and distortions in other areas that are inconsistent with any truly advanced underlying knowledge. It is seen as a product of early exploration mixed with speculation, and perhaps intentional embellishment, rather than a faithful copy of an ancient accurate source. Even the maps of the renowned Flemish cartographer Gerardus Mercator, famous for his Mercator projection used in his world map of 1569, have been drawn into the discussion. Later maps by Mercator sometimes show a more detailed southern continent with rivers and coastal features, reminiscent of the claims for Piri Reis and Finney. Proponents argue that Mercator, who was known for his scholarly approach, also claimed to have used older sources for his maps, implying he too might have accessed ancient knowledge for his depictions of the southern continent that supposedly predated its formal discovery and detailed mapping. However, Mercator's depictions of the southern continent are also understood by mainstream cartographers to be largely speculative. Like his contemporaries, Mercator subscribed to the prevalent Terra Australis Incognita theory, believing a large landmass had to exist in the south for global balance. While Mercator was a genius in cartographic projection, his southern continent was a theoretical construct, filled in with imagined features rather than being based on secret ancient surveys. The inaccuracies and speculative nature of these features on his maps are consistent with the geographical knowledge available to him at the time, combined with theoretical reasoning. There is no historical evidence that Mercator utilized any ancient hyper-accurate global survey data. The central argument for these anomalous ancient maps, put forth by proponents of forbidden archaeology, is that they are not original creations of their stated dates, but are instead imperfect copies of much older, highly accurate source maps. These source maps, it is theorized, were created by a technologically advanced pre-Ice Age civilization that possessed the capability for global surveying and precise mapping, perhaps using methods unknown to us today. The knowledge from this lost civilization, according to these theories, was somehow transmitted through the ages, possibly through ancient libraries like Alexandria, obscure texts, or secret societies, eventually coming into the possession of Renaissance cartographers who then copied them, introducing errors and distortions in the process. The alleged accuracy of specific features, like an ice-free Antarctica, is then explained as genuine remnants of these ancient originals, while the general inaccuracies are attributed to the degradation of information through successive copying. Mainstream cartographic history offers a different explanation for the development of global mapping. It highlights the gradual evolution of surveying instruments and techniques, from the simple compass and astrolabe to the later invention of the chronometer, which solved the longitude problem. Early maps were often speculative, combining known coastal outlines from explorers' logs with guesswork and philosophical ideas to fill in unknown areas. The concept of Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, was a philosophical necessity for many geographers to balance the world. Distortion is an inherent part of early maps due to the lack of accurate longitude data, poor surveying tools, and the immense challenge of projecting a three-dimensional sphere onto a two-dimensional flat surface. Misinterpretation of existing coastal features such as ice shelves or isolated islands could also lead to drawing non-existent landmasses or extending known ones. Furthermore, artistic license and the need to present a complete, albeit speculative worldview played a significant role in how unknown regions were depicted. The challenges to the lost global mapping ability theory are substantial. Firstly, there is a complete lack of concrete, independently verified evidence for the existence of these highly accurate source maps from a pre-Ice Age civilization. No such original maps have ever been found or authenticated. Secondly, the general inaccuracies and distortions found in maps like Piri Reis and Orontius Phineus tend to outweigh the few alleged accurate features. Mainstream analysis suggests that simpler, conventional explanations, such as coincidental resemblance, speculation, or misinterpretation of existing features, are more plausible than postulating a lost, advanced global mapping civilization. Thirdly, if such a global mapping civilization existed, one would expect to find other widespread archaeological evidence of its presence and advanced technology across multiple continents, which is generally not found in the archaeological record as interpreted by mainstream science. The idea that such precise knowledge could be maintained through successive copying over thousands of years, without the original technology or context, also presents a significant challenge to the theory. The academic consensus remains that these maps, while fascinating historical artifacts, do not provide definitive evidence of a lost global mapping ability from an unknown ancient civilization. The accepted narrative of human development describes a progression from simple to complex, both in terms of technology and biological evolution. This narrative relies on a chronological order of discoveries. Stone tools precede metal tools, primitive art precedes sophisticated art, and simple organisms precede complex ones over geological time. However, there exists a category of archaeological or paleontological finds that appear to contradict this orderly progression. These are known as out-of-place artifacts or OOPArts. An OOPArt is an object discovered in a context, whether geological, archaeological or historical, that challenges conventional scientific understanding of chronological timelines or technological capabilities. These objects suggest that either humans or other intelligent beings possessed advanced knowledge or technology at a time when they should not have, or that certain life forms existed much earlier than currently believed, thereby questioning the slow, steady progression of development. OOPArts can generally be categorized into a few types: those that suggest advanced technology in ancient or primitive settings, those that imply anomalous human or hominid presence far earlier than accepted, and those that defy known natural formation processes by appearing artificially made. While some OOPArts have straightforward mainstream explanations as hoaxes, misidentifications, or modern intrusions, others continue to inspire debate, pushing the boundaries of what is considered possible in the deep past. In the realm of technological OOPArts, beyond the Antikythera mechanism or the Baghdad battery already discussed for their mechanical or electrical implications, other examples prompt inquiry. The Khoso artifact, briefly mentioned before, is a curious case. In 1961, a spark plug-like object was reportedly found, encased in what was initially identified as a geode, supposedly millions of years old, near Olancha, California. This would imply the existence of advanced technology hundreds of thousands or even millions of years ago. However, subsequent analysis by mainstream geologists and archaeologists largely concluded that the GeoD was actually a concretion of rapidly forming iron oxide, and the object itself was a common 20th century spark plug, likely lost by a miner in the early 1900s. The concretion simply formed around the spark plug relatively quickly, giving it an illusion of extreme antiquity. The case serves as a cautionary tale regarding the importance of rigorous scientific dating and contextual analysis. Another example is the Dorchester pot. In 1852, a metallic bell-shaped pot was reportedly discovered embedded within a chunk of solid rock that had been blasted from a site near Dorchester, Massachusetts. The rock formation was said to be hundreds of millions of years old. If true, this would be an astounding OOPArt, indicating metalworking long before complex life, let alone humans, existed. However, like many early finds, the Dorchester pot lacks proper scientific verification and contextual documentation. No geological or archaeological study was ever conducted to confirm its exact original location or the age of the surrounding rock. It is likely that the rock was a lump of coal or a rapidly formed concretion that encased a modern object, similar to explanations for other alleged finds in ancient strata. Without verifiable evidence, it remains an unproven anomaly. Reports of iron screws found in ancient geological formations also surface periodically. For instance, an alleged iron screw was found in a piece of coal in Russia, supposedly dating to millions of years ago. Such claims, similar to the iron pot in coal or the London hammer, typically lack independent verification by geologists and archaeologists. The most common mainstream explanation is that these are modern screws or nails that have fallen into fissures or cracks in the rock or coal layers at a much later date, and then become naturally encased by mineral deposits or concretions, giving the false impression of ancient origin. The Roman dodecahedra are another type of OOPArt that puzzles historians, not due to extreme age, but due to their unknown function. These small hollow objects made of bronze or stone have 12 flat pentagonal faces, each with a circular hole of varying size and small knobs at the corners. They have been found at various Roman sites across Europe, primarily dating to the 2nd to 4th centuries CE. While clearly Roman in origin, their purpose remains a mystery. Theories range from measuring instruments, dice, candle stands, or even decorative objects. None of the proposed functions have gained widespread acceptance, making them out of place in the sense that we do not fully understand the daily life or specific technical needs of the Romans that would necessitate such an object. their existence suggests a purpose that has been lost to time, despite their clear historical context. The Nebra Sky disk, discovered illegally in Germany in 1999 and dated to approximately 3,600 years ago, is a remarkable artifact that pushes the boundaries of perceived ancient astronomical knowledge. This bronze disk, inlaid with gold symbols representing the Sun, Moon, stars, including the Pleiades cluster, and potentially solstices, is now largely accepted by mainstream archaeology. While not an out-of-place artifact in the sense of impossible technology, its detailed astronomical representations imply a sophisticated understanding of celestial movements by Bronze Age people. It challenges the idea that such precise astronomical observation and calendrical knowledge were only developed by later, more advanced civilizations. It suggests that complex astronomical knowledge could have existed in earlier periods through skilled observation and dedication, even without advanced optical instruments. In the category of biological or paleontological ooparts, claims of anomalous human or hominid remains are particularly contentious. The Malachite Man from France is an old claim that refers to an alleged fossilized human skeleton, or bones found within tertiary rock formations, which are tens of millions of years old. If authentic, this would place modern humans or close relatives millions of years before their accepted evolutionary appearance. However, such claims have consistently been rejected by mainstream paleontology and anthropology due to a lack of verifiable evidence, proper documentation, and often misidentification of non-human remains or misinterpretation of geological context. These findings have often been found to be hoaxes or based on flawed dating and analysis. Similarly, reports from various locations around the world of abnormally large human skeletons or footprints in very old rock layers fueling folklore of giants almost universally lack scientific verification. These are usually found to be hoaxes, misinterpretations of natural erosional features in rock that resemble footprints, or misidentified animal tracks. The scientific consensus is that there is no credible evidence of giant humans in the fossil record. More subtle, but equally challenging, are claims of Precambrian spores or complex microfossils found in extremely ancient rock, predating the Cambrian explosion, around 540 million years ago, when complex multicellular life rapidly diversified. While mainstream paleontology continually revises the timeline of early life with new discoveries, pushing back the origins of certain forms, claims of sophisticated or modern-looking microorganisms in billion-year-old rock layers are met with skepticism. These are often explained as contaminants, misinterpretations of mineral formations, or very simple, non-complex forms of early life, not evidence of advanced biological forms out of place in their time. Certain geological formations are also cited as ooparts because they appear unnaturally regular or artificial. The Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a prime example. It consists of tens of thousands of interlocking basalt columns, mostly hexagonal, forming what looks like a meticulously paved path stretching into the sea. While it appears strikingly man-made, it is a well-understood natural geological formation resulting from the rapid cooling and contraction of volcanic lava. The regular polygonal shapes are a result of natural fracturing processes that occur in basalt. This illustrates how natural geological processes can create patterns that strongly mimic human design, leading to misinterpretations by those unaware of the geological mechanisms. Natural concretions, which are compact masses of mineral matter formed by precipitation within sediments or sedimentary rock, are a common explanation for many alleged ooparts. They can take on various shapes, including perfect spheres, like the Klerksdorp spheres, discs, or other forms that might resemble manufactured objects. They're often smooth or regular surfaces, formed by natural growth processes, can easily be mistaken for signs of artificial shaping, especially when found in geological contexts that imply great age. The Coso artifacts' geode casing and the metallic spheres are frequently attributed to such natural formations. The out-of-place mechanism of ooparts essentially challenges the scientific principles of uniformitarianism and the linear evolution of technology and biology. If genuine, ooparts would imply the existence of lost civilizations with unknown capabilities, necessitate a radical re-evaluation of evolutionary timelines, or force a complete rethinking of Earth's deep history. They suggest that our understanding of the past is fundamentally flawed, and that periods of high technological or biological advancement might have occurred and then been lost, leaving only fragmented and enigmatic traces. Mainstream explanations for UPARTs are usually grounded in well-established scientific principles. Firstly, misidentification is a common factor. Natural objects or formations are mistaken for artificial ones due to pareidolia, the tendency to see familiar patterns in random stimuli, or a lack of geological understanding. Secondly, misinterpretation of geological context or dating is frequent. Objects might be found near older strata, but actually belong to a more recent disturbed layer, or their age is determined by flawed or unscientific methods. Thirdly, hoaxes and forgeries have historically played a significant role, with individuals creating fake artifacts for fame, profit, or to support specific ideological viewpoints. Fourthly, modern intrusion occurs when relatively modern objects fall into older layers through cracks, animal burrows, or subsequent human activity like mining. Lastly, sometimes what appears to be advanced technology was actually achieved through immense manual labour, ingenious use of simple tools and patience, rather than truly unknown technologies, underscoring an underestimation of ancient human capabilities. Most importantly, many UPARTs lack proper archaeological excavation, scientific documentation, and independent scientific analysis, making their claims impossible to verify or replicate. The scientific process demands rigorous standards of proof. A single anomalous artifact, no matter how intriguing, is rarely sufficient to overturn a widely accepted scientific paradigm. Science requires reproducible evidence, corroborating finds from multiple independent sources, and a systematic understanding of the context of a discovery. While some anomalies, like the Antikythera mechanism, are eventually integrated into the historical narrative as genuinely advanced for their time, though still an outlier, many UPARTs remain unverified or are explained by natural phenomena or human error. The distinction between a true scientific anomaly that leads to new discoveries and an unverified or debunked out-of-place artifact is crucial. While UPARTs continue to fascinate and prompt questions about our past, they serve as a reminder of the scientific need for caution, critical thinking, and rigorous evidence in unravelling the true story of humanity and Earth. Ancient cultures across the globe possessed a deep fascination with the cosmos. From the earliest nomadic groups tracking the seasons by the sun and moon, to settled agricultural societies relying on celestial cycles for planting and harvesting, observation of the sky was a fundamental aspect of human life. Mainstream understanding of ancient astronomy acknowledges that early societies developed sophisticated methods for timekeeping, creating calendars, navigating and aligning structures for practical and ceremonial purposes. They were astute observers, meticulously tracking the movements of celestial bodies over generations. However, this knowledge was generally empirical, based on repeated observations rather than on a theoretical understanding of celestial mechanics, as developed in later scientific traditions. The sun, moon, and visible stars were seen as divine entities, or their movements were interpreted symbolically. The concept of cosmic connections in forbidden archaeology explores whether certain ancient sites, artifacts, or texts suggest a level of astronomical understanding that transcends mere practical skywatching. It questions if ancient peoples possessed a more theoretical knowledge of celestial mechanics, or if their alignments and calendrical systems reflect an awareness of long astronomical cycles that would require thousands of years of continuous observation, or even suggest knowledge inherited from a much older, lost civilization, or perhaps gained through extraordinary means. This implies a cosmic connection that goes beyond simple earth-bound observation, hinting at a deeper, possibly forgotten, scientific understanding of the universe. Megalithic observatories and alignments are a primary focus of this inquiry. Stonehenge in England, a prehistoric monument constructed over several phases from approximately 5,000 to 3,500 years ago, is a prime example. Its most famous alignment is with the summer solstice sunrise, where the sun rises directly over the heel stone viewed from the centre of the monument. There are also alignments with the winter solstice sunset. Proponents of advanced ancient astronomical knowledge suggest that the precision of these alignments and others proposed for lunar cycles and other celestial events, indicates a sophisticated understanding of sky movements beyond simple observation. Some argue that Stonehenge's layout allowed for the prediction of eclipses or other complex astronomical phenomena, implying a level of celestial mechanics that should not have been present in the Neolithic and Bronze Age. However, mainstream archaeological interpretations argue that while Stonehenge certainly functioned as a calendrical and ceremonial site with astronomical significance, its alignments do not necessarily imply advanced theoretical knowledge. Simple observation over many generations, noting the extremes of the sun's and moon's cycles, would allow builders to align structures to these points without needing a complex understanding of orbits or mathematical predictions. Many of the alleged intricate lunar or other stellar alignments proposed for Stonehenge have also been subject to scientific scrutiny and are often found to be coincidental or not sufficiently precise to prove intentional astronomical purpose beyond the main solar alignments. The monument's primary function is widely accepted as ritualistic and ceremonial, with astronomical observations integrated for practical purposes like marking seasons for agriculture and religious festivals. New Grange, an ancient passage tomb in Ireland, built around 5,200 years ago, presents another well-known astronomical alignment. Its long passage leads to a central chamber, and on the winter solstice sunrise, a beam of light precisely penetrates the roof box above the entrance, illuminating the inner chamber. Proponents suggest this precise engineering for a specific celestial event demonstrates sophisticated planning and astronomical knowledge. Mainstream archaeology fully accepts this alignment as intentional, viewing it as a remarkable feat of Neolithic engineering and observation. It shows that ancient builders possessed the skill and knowledge to align massive structures to significant celestial events for ritualistic purposes. It is seen as a testament to careful observation and construction, but not necessarily advanced in a scientific sense beyond practical sky knowledge and the desire to connect earthly structures with celestial phenomena. The Carnac stones in Brittany, France consist of thousands of megaliths arranged in rows, dating from approximately 6,000 to 4,500 years ago. Some researchers, particularly Alexander Thom, a professor of engineering, proposed in the mid-20th century that these stone rows formed a vast and complex astronomical observatory, capable of tracking lunar and solar cycles with high precision, including the complex 19-year lunar standstill cycle. He argued for sophisticated geometrical and astronomical knowledge embedded in their layout. Mainstream archaeologists and astronomers, however, have largely critiqued these claims. They argue that many of the proposed alignments are coincidental, given the sheer number of stones. Proving intentional astronomical purpose for all the claimed alignments is difficult, and the natural geological features or the sheer scale of the stone arrangements could account for some apparent patterns. While the Carnac site undoubtedly had ceremonial and possibly calendrical functions, strong evidence for a highly precise and complex astronomical observatory with theoretical understanding is generally lacking for mainstream acceptance. Nabta Playa in the Sahara Desert of Egypt offers an older example of astronomical alignment. Around 7,500 years ago, pre-dynastic pastoralists constructed a megalithic circle and other stone arrangements. Some of these stones align with the summer solstice sunrise and certain stars such as Sirius. Proponents highlight this as evidence of advanced astronomical knowledge among early desert dwellers, long before the rise of dynastic Egypt. Mainstream archaeology considers Nabta Playa a significant discovery, accepting it as one of the world's earliest known astronomical calendars. It demonstrates that early pastoralist societies had a good understanding of seasonal cycles for managing their livestock and resources using celestial markers. It is seen as a remarkable example of early calendrical observation and cultural development for its age, but not necessarily evidence of advanced celestial mechanics in the modern scientific sense. Ancient calendrical systems themselves are often cited as evidence of cosmic connections and sophisticated understanding. The Mayan calendar system from Mesoamerica is a prime example. The Maya developed multiple interconnected calendars, including the Solkin, a 260-day ritual calendar, the Harb, a 365-day civil calendar, and the long count calendar, which tracks long periods of time. Their astronomical tables were incredibly accurate, allowing for precise predictions of lunar and solar eclipses and the cycles of Venus. Proponents argue that the uncanny accuracy of the Mayan calendar and their ability to predict long cycles imply advanced mathematical and observational skills. The completion of the long count calendar's Great Cycle in 2012 was famously misinterpreted by some as a prophecy of the end of the world, but it was merely the end of a calendrical period. Mainstream interpretation of Mayan astronomy acknowledges its extreme sophistication. The Maya developed a base 20-numeral system and the concept of zero, allowing for complex mathematical calculations. Their astronomical achievements were the result of centuries of meticulous, diligent observation and painstaking record-keeping by a dedicated class of scribes and priests. They did not necessarily require optical instruments or a theoretical understanding of planetary orbits in the modern sense. Their knowledge was empirical, based on observed patterns over generations, allowing them to predict cycles with high precision. While remarkable, it fits within the context of a highly developed civilization with a strong emphasis on astronomy for religious and agricultural purposes. The ancient Egyptians also demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles, particularly through their civil calendar and its reliance on the heliacal rising of Sirius, known as Sopdet. The heliacal rising of Sirius, which occurred just before the annual Nile flood, was a crucial event for Egyptian agriculture and religious festivals. The Egyptian civil calendar had 365 days. Because this calendar did not account for the extra quarter day of Earth's orbit, it slowly drifted out of sync with the actual solar year. It would take approximately 1,460 years for the civil calendar to realign with the heliacal rising of Sirius. This period is known as the Sothic cycle. Proponents sometimes argue that the Egyptians' awareness of this long cycle implies advanced long-term observation and understanding. Mainstream Egyptology interprets the Sothic cycle as an observed phenomenon that the Egyptians eventually recognized through long-term record-keeping. Their calendar was a practical tool for agriculture and religious festivals. It reflects pragmatic rather than purely theoretical astronomy, based on careful observation over centuries, rather than the ability to predict the cycle far in advance based on a theoretical model. Perhaps the most contentious claim of cosmic connections involves ancient knowledge of the precession of the equinoxes. Precession is a slow wobble of Earth's axis, similar to a spinning top slowing down, which causes the apparent position of the stars at the spring and autumn equinoxes to shift gradually over a vast cycle of approximately 25,920 years. This phenomenon causes the age of a given astrological sign to change over roughly 2,160-year periods. The discovery of precession is traditionally attributed to the Greek astronomer Hipparchus in the 2nd century BCE, based on comparing star catalogues separated by several centuries. Proponents of advanced ancient knowledge argue that evidence in ancient texts, such as the Vedic texts of India, Egyptian iconography, or Mayan writings, suggest that these cultures had knowledge of precession, indicating either extremely long-term observation or inherited knowledge from a much older, lost civilization. Plato's concept of the Great Year, a cosmic cycle of a similar duration, is sometimes cited as further evidence. Mainstream astronomers and classicists largely dispute claims of ancient knowledge of precession before Hipparchus. They argue that any apparent references in ancient texts are usually poetic, allegorical, or can be explained by other astronomical phenomena, or simply the observation of the changing position of constellations over much shorter periods. There is no clear, unambiguous ancient text that explicitly describes the scientific phenomenon of precession. Hipparchus's discovery itself was a painstaking process of comparing detailed star observations separated by centuries, an empirical and incremental scientific breakthrough, not a revelation of inherited ancient knowledge. Another often cited example for cosmic connections is the Dogon tribe of Mali in West Africa. Starting in the 1930s, French anthropologists Marcel Griaule and Germaine Dieterlen reported that the Dogon possessed detailed traditional knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf star that is invisible to the naked eye, and its orbital period of approximately 50 years around Sirius A. The Dogon also reportedly knew of a tiny companion star for Sirius B. Proponents of forbidden archaeology and ancient astronaut theories argue that this knowledge is impossible to obtain without advanced telescopes, suggesting either extraterrestrial contact in the distant past or inherited knowledge from a lost civilization with advanced astronomical technology. However, mainstream anthropological and astronomical investigations have largely debunked these claims. Critics argue that the Dogon's reported knowledge of Sirius B was likely introduced by the Western anthropologists themselves during their interviews in the 20th century. The Dogon people, being receptive to new information, may have incorporated details about Sirius B, which was a subject of scientific interest at the time, into their existing oral traditions. It is also possible that the anthropologists overinterpreted Dogon cosmology to fit their preconceived notions. There is no independent verification of the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B predating Western contact. Their traditional cosmology, while rich and complex, does not contain verifiable scientific details about invisible stars that could only be known through telescopic observation. The precise alignments of the Giza pyramids in Egypt are also considered by some to be evidence of cosmic connections. Beyond their alignment to cardinal directions, which reflects sophisticated surveying, the Orion correlation theory, proposed by Robert Bauval, suggests that the layout of the three main Giza pyramids mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt. Bauval claims that this correlation is particularly precise when accounting for the apparent positions of the stars around 10,500 BCE due to the effects of precession. This theory implies that the Giza pyramids were either built in that much older period or were deliberately aligned to symbolically commemorate that ancient epoch, suggesting a much deeper level of astronomical knowledge and a connection to a pre-dynastic civilization. Mainstream Egyptologists and astronomers dispute the Orion correlation theory. They argue that the correlation is not exact and requires selective matching of star sizes and pyramid positions. The slight offset of the third pyramid from the main diagonal is often cited as a weakness in the theory. Furthermore, they emphasize that the pyramid's alignment to true north could have been achieved by simple astronomical observations, such as tracking circumpolar stars, without requiring complex knowledge of precession or sophisticated star mapping over vast timescales. While ancient Egyptians certainly valued astronomical alignments for religious and practical reasons, the level of precision and the specific long-term symbolic connection proposed by the Orion correlation theory remain unproven. In conclusion, interpretations of cosmic connections in ancient cultures often revolve around distinguishing practical observation from theoretical knowledge. Mainstream archaeology and astronomy acknowledge that ancient peoples were highly intelligent and astute observers of the sky, capable of building impressive structures aligned with celestial events and developing sophisticated calendars for practical purposes. They achieved this through meticulous, long-term empirical observation, not necessarily through a modern scientific understanding of orbital mechanics or advanced optical instruments. The risk in interpreting ancient astronomical knowledge often lies in pattern matching, where researchers might select specific alignments or textual references that fit a theory while ignoring others that do not, or misinterpreting symbolic or mythological narratives as literal scientific descriptions. The absence of direct, unambiguous textual or archaeological evidence for advanced theoretical astronomy in most ancient cultures means that simpler explanations, based on empirical observation and ingenious application of basic methods, are generally preferred over complex theories of lost knowledge, inherited wisdom from older civilizations, or extraterrestrial contact. While the precise capabilities of some ancient skywatchers continue to inspire wonder, the scientific community maintains a cautious approach to claims that drastically extend their presumed scientific understanding beyond the available evidence. The history of human flight, as understood by mainstream science and engineering, is a relatively recent phenomenon. It begins with theoretical concepts and early attempts at gliding, progressing to the first successful hot air balloon flights in the late 18th century, and culminates in the invention of powered, controlled flight with the Wright brothers airplane in the early 20th century. Before these developments, ancient cultures, lacking modern scientific principles of aerodynamics, propulsion, and material science, are not believed to have possessed the technology or knowledge to achieve sustained aerial travel. The idea of sky vehicles existing in antiquity, therefore, directly challenges this conventional timeline of technological development, suggesting a forgotten period of advanced aerial capability or even encounters with non-human intelligences. The concept of sky vehicles in forbidden archaeology primarily draws from two main sources: ancient texts that describe what appear to be flying machines or aerial phenomena, and ancient artwork that depicts objects or figures interpreted as being associated with flight or modern technology. These interpretations often lead to the premise that ancient civilizations were not purely primitive, but may have developed or encountered advanced aerial technology, or even that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in the distant past. Ancient Indian texts, particularly those written in Sanskrit, are frequently cited for their descriptions of vimanas. These are purportedly flying machines described in epic poems like the Rig Veda, Ramayana, and Mahabharata, and in later, more technical-sounding texts like the Vaimanika Shastra. The descriptions of vimanas in these ancient epics are often fantastical and varied. They are depicted as aerial chariots or flying palaces used by gods and mythical heroes, capable of travelling through the air and sometimes into space. They are described as having different shapes and sizes, emitting light and sound, and occasionally being used for warfare, delivering destructive weapons. For example, in the Ramayana, the Pushpaka Vimana is described as a self-propelled flying palace that can change its size and speed, used by the demon king Ravana and later by Rama. The Vaimanika Shastra, meaning science of aeronautics, is a specific Sanskrit text that provides detailed descriptions of Vimana construction, materials and propulsion systems. It was supposedly dictated in the early 20th century by a Hindu scholar, Pandit Subbaraya Shastri, who claimed to be transmitting knowledge from ancient lost texts. This text, in particular, is interpreted by proponents as a genuine ancient manual for building flying machines, implying a highly developed scientific and engineering capability in ancient India. It describes various types of vimanas, their components, and how they were powered, often with very specific technical-sounding terminology. Proponents argue that the level of detail and technical specificity is too great to be mere myth or fantasy, suggesting that ancient Indians truly possessed advanced aerial technology that has since been lost. However, mainstream Indologists, Sanskrit scholars, and engineers largely dismiss the Vaimanika Shastra as a genuine ancient text. They regard it as a modern fabrication, likely written in the early 20th century by Shastri, drawing inspiration from the imaginative descriptions of Vimanas in the ancient epics but not based on any genuine ancient scientific knowledge. Critiques by experts in Sanskrit and engineering have shown that its technical descriptions are often internally inconsistent, scientifically nonsensical, and demonstrate no real understanding of aerodynamics, physics, or propulsion principles. For example, it describes propulsion systems that defy known laws of physics and materials that are impossible to work with using ancient techniques. Furthermore, there is a complete absence of any archaeological evidence in ancient India, such as physical remains of vimanas, landing strips, hangars, or manufacturing sites, that would corroborate the idea of widespread ancient aerial technology. The vimanas in the true ancient texts are consistently interpreted as mythological vehicles, symbolic representations of divine power, rather than literal engineering blueprints. Ancient Egyptian artwork and hieroglyphs have also been interpreted by some as depicting sky vehicles or advanced technology. The Abydos hieroglyphs, found in the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, Egypt, are a highly disputed set of carvings. Some observers claim that these hieroglyphs, through a specific interpretation, appear to show modern vehicles like a helicopter, a submarine, and a jet plane. Proponents suggest these are clear representations of advanced technology, implying that ancient Egyptians either possessed such machines or witnessed them. However, mainstream Egyptologists provide a well-accepted explanation for these images. They are a result of a common phenomenon in Egyptian epigraphy called a palimpsest. This occurs when older hieroglyphs are carved over with new ones. Over time, erosion and weathering can cause parts of the original and new carvings to combine in a way that, purely by coincidence, creates shapes that resemble modern objects. When viewed in their complete context and understanding the layering of hieroglyphs, the images are fully explainable as standard Egyptian symbols, showing no actual depiction of modern vehicles. No other archaeological evidence supports the idea of ancient Egyptian aircraft. Similarly, the Saqqara bird, a small wooden bird artifact discovered in Egypt in 1898, and dating to around 200 BCE, has been proposed by some as a model of an ancient aircraft or glider. Its design, with wings and a tail, has led to speculation about ancient Egyptian knowledge of aerodynamics. However, mainstream Egyptologists consider it most likely a ceremonial object, a children's toy, or possibly a weather vane. Its aerodynamic properties are insufficient for stable flight as a model or a full-scale aircraft, lacking essential features like a proper fuselage, landing gear, or a power source. There is no evidence in any other ancient Egyptian texts, artwork, or archaeological finds that suggests the practical use or understanding of gliders or aircraft. Beyond specific examples, many proponents of sky vehicles point to various ancient artwork and petroglyphs from around the world that they interpret as depicting UFOs, unidentified flying objects, or astronaut-like figures. For instance, some rock carvings in Val Camonica, Italy, are interpreted by a few as showing figures in spacesuits or strange flying craft. Sumerian cylinder seals have been interpreted by some as depicting gods arriving from the sky in vehicles or carrying unusual objects, which are then linked to extraterrestrial influence. These interpretations form a significant part of the ancient astronaut theory, which posits that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in ancient times, influenced human development, provided advanced technology, or were the gods described in ancient myths. Proponents like Erich von Däniken argue that the sheer number of parallel myths across cultures, the unexplained technological feats, such as the construction of the pyramids or megalithic sites, and these sky vehicle depictions cumulatively point to non-human intervention. However, the ancient astronaut theory and its interpretations of sky vehicles are overwhelmingly dismissed by mainstream archaeology, history, and science as pseudoscience. Mainstream scholars argue that these interpretations rely on a highly selective reading of evidence, disregarding conventional archaeological and historical explanations. Ancient texts and artwork are almost universally interpreted as mythological, symbolic, allegorical, or religious in nature, not as literal technical manuals or eyewitness accounts of machines or alien encounters. Figures depicted in ancient art, often stylized or abstract, are consistently interpreted as deities, mythical beings, or humans in ritualistic attire, entirely consistent with the cultural and religious context in which they were created. The flying craft are typically seen as symbolic representations of celestial phenomena, divine power, or the movements of gods within their cosmology, not literal depictions of machines. The general primitive past challenge is what these sky vehicle interpretations aim to fundamentally overturn. The notion that ancient humanity was purely primitive in its technological capabilities is directly contradicted by the idea of advanced aerial machines. If Vimanas or other ancient aircraft truly existed, it would imply a forgotten period of high technology, lost scientific knowledge, or undeniable contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. This would necessitate a complete rewriting of human history, evolution, and technological progression. Mainstream explanations for these sky vehicle interpretations are primarily rooted in traditional academic disciplines. Firstly, ancient texts and art are understood within their rich mythological and symbolic contexts. They are creations of imagination and belief systems, not engineering drawings. Secondly, many interpretations are a result of misinterpretation of stylized or abstract artistic representations. Ancient artists often use symbolism and exaggeration, and their work should not be taken as literal photographic representations of reality. Thirdly, understanding ancient art and texts requires deep knowledge of the specific cultural, religious, and historical context. Proponents of sky vehicles often interpret these artifacts outside their cultural context, applying modern technological frameworks to ancient symbolism. Fourthly, pareidolia, the psychological phenomenon where the human mind perceives familiar patterns or objects in random or ambiguous stimuli, can explain why some see modern machines in ancient hieroglyphs or rock carvings. Lastly, and most critically, there is a complete lack of corroborating physical evidence. No archaeological remains of actual flying machines, landing pads, manufacturing sites, or consistent scientific principles to support the claims have ever been discovered and verified. Mainstream archaeology emphasizes that while ancient humans were incredibly ingenious, they developed technology within their means, and a leap to powered flight without any known scientific principles would be an anomaly of immense and unexplainable scale. Despite the widespread mainstream dismissal, the idea of ancient sky vehicles continues to hold significant fascination for many. It taps into a desire for a more exciting and mysterious past, the allure of lost knowledge, and fundamental questions about human origins and potential contact with non-human intelligence. However, from a factual and scientific perspective, the evidence presented for sky vehicles does not meet the rigorous standards required to challenge the established understanding of human technological history. It remains a compelling topic for speculative inquiry, but not one supported by verifiable archaeological or historical data. The accepted understanding of ancient human societies suggests that their technological capabilities were largely limited to muscle power, the use of basic mechanical advantages like levers, ramps and rollers, and the harnessing of fire for heat and light. Wind power was utilised for sailing, and water power for rudimentary mills in some regions. The concept of complex electrical grids, advanced forms of propulsion, or other non-conventional energy sources is firmly placed within the realm of modern technological development, largely emerging from the scientific revolution of recent centuries. Mainstream history indicates a clear progression from simple energy solutions to the complex systems that power our world today. However, a field of inquiry within forbidden archaeology explores theories that challenge this view, proposing that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge and means to harness hidden energies. This core idea suggests that certain ancient artifacts, structures, or interpreted texts provide evidence that these cultures understood and utilized energy sources far beyond what mainstream history acknowledges, or that they had highly advanced applications of known energies. This implies a lost technological knowledge of energy generation, transmission, or application, suggesting a past far more technologically sophisticated than commonly believed. One of the most frequently discussed artifacts related to ancient energy is the Baghdad Battery, also sometimes referred to as the Parthian Battery. Discovered in 1938 near Baghdad, Iraq, it consists of a simple clay jar, approximately 5.5 inches tall, containing a copper cylinder held in place by an asphalt stopper, with an iron rod suspended in the centre of the copper cylinder. It is dated to the Parthian era, around 2,000 years ago, or possibly earlier to the Sassanid period. Proponents interpret this artifact as a primitive galvanic cell, capable of producing a small electric current if filled with an electrolyte such as fruit juice, vinegar, or an alkaline solution. Experiments have shown that such a setup can indeed generate a small voltage, typically around 0.5 to 1 volt. Those who believe it was a battery propose various uses for this ancient device. Some suggest it was used for electroplating, possibly to apply thin layers of gold or silver onto other metals, though no artifacts conclusively showing ancient electroplating have been found that require such a device. Others speculate it could have been used for mild electrotherapy for pain relief, or as a source of slight electrical shocks for religious rituals, or as a curiosity. The potential for a consistent, albeit low, electrical current is the basis of its hidden energy claim. Mainstream archaeologists and historians, however, generally remain skeptical of its interpretation as a battery. They argue that there is no archaeological evidence of wires, electrodes, or other components necessary for connecting and utilizing multiple such batteries to generate significant power. More importantly, no artifacts found in the region show clear signs of having been electroplated or treated with electricity. The most common alternative explanation is that the jar was used for storing sacred scrolls or herbs, or perhaps as a container for documents, with the metallic components serving some other non-electrical purpose, perhaps as part of a ritual object. The battery function, while possible in principle, remains speculative without corroborating evidence of its practical electrical application in ancient times. Another prominent piece of iconography interpreted as evidence of hidden energy is the Dendra light relief, found in the Temple of Hathor at Dendra, Egypt. This relief depicts what appears to be a large bulb-like object emerging from a lotus flower, with a snake inside connected by a cable to a jed pillar, an ancient Egyptian symbol of stability and the backbone of Osiris. Proponents of ancient advanced technology interpret this relief literally as a depiction of an ancient electrical lamp, In this interpretation, the snake is seen as a filament, the cable as a conductor, and the djed pillar as an insulator or a power source. This interpretation suggests that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge of electricity and used advanced illumination technology, such as light bulbs, far predating their modern invention. This would imply a sophisticated understanding of electrical principles and the means to generate and control electrical power. However, mainstream Egyptological interpretation firmly rejects this technological reading. Egyptologists explain the relief as purely symbolic religious imagery, consistent with the rich mythology and symbolism found throughout Egyptian temples. The lotus and snake are powerful symbols in Egyptian cosmology, representing creation, regeneration, and the annual flooding of the Nile. The djed pillar is a well-known symbol of stability, endurance, and the god Osiris, often depicted as a lightning rod for divine power. The bulb shape is explained as a symbolic representation of the primordial waters from which creation emerged, or as a stylized representation of the sun's journey through the underworld. There is extensive archaeological evidence of how ancient Egyptians lit their temple interiors and tombs, using oil lamps, torches, and highly polished copper or bronze mirrors to reflect sunlight. No archaeological evidence of electrical devices, wires, power plants, or any other component necessary for electrical illumination has ever been found in ancient Egypt. The interpretation of the Dendera relief as an electrical device is considered a misinterpretation of ancient religious and mythological symbolism through a modern technological lens. Speculative ideas about pyramid power also feature prominently in discussions of hidden energies, particularly focusing on the Great Pyramid of Giza. While mainstream Egyptology views the pyramids as monumental tombs and symbols of pharaonic power, proponents of alternative theories, such as engineer Christopher Dunn, suggest the Great Pyramid was not a tomb, but a gigantic machine designed to generate or harness energy. Dunn argues that the pyramid's precise dimensions, alignments, materials, and internal design are too specific to be merely a tomb. He suggests these features encode advanced mathematical and physical constants, implying a design for specific energy frequencies. In this theory, the Great Pyramid is seen as an energy condenser or generator. The various materials used, such as granite, which has piezoelectric properties, meaning it can generate an electric charge under mechanical stress, limestone, which is an excellent insulator, and the presence of water in the subterranean chamber, though this chamber is often dry, are interpreted as components of an ancient energy system. The internal chambers, like the King's Chamber and Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery, are interpreted as resonance chambers, waveguides, or specific components for manipulating energy. The King's Chamber, built of solid granite, is seen as capable of resonating sound or vibration. The proposed types of energy include telluric energy, Earth's natural vibrations, acoustic energy, or even microwave energy. These energies, it is speculated, could have been used for various purposes: powering ancient devices, long-distance communication, healing, or even influencing weather patterns. However, mainstream scientific and archaeological consensus finds no evidence for energy generation within the pyramid. The proposed mechanisms are speculative and lack engineering feasibility. The materials have natural properties, but there is no evidence of their intentional use for energy generation, and their dimensions and alignments are explained within the scope of ancient surveying and construction without needing advanced energy theories. The primary purpose of the Great Pyramid, based on overwhelming archaeological evidence, remains a tomb, albeit an incredibly monumental one. The idea of ancient acoustics and the use of sound as an energy source is another area of speculation. Many megalithic sites, such as Newgrange in Ireland or the ancient temples in Malta, possess remarkable acoustic properties, including long reverberation times. Some theories suggest that ancient builders not only understood these acoustic principles but actively used sound frequencies for practical purposes, such as levitation to move heavy stones, healing, or long-distance communication. It is speculated that specific frequencies or resonant vibrations could reduce the weight of stones or make them easier to work with, helping to explain the construction of giants in stone with primitive tools. Mainstream scientific and archaeological explanations for these acoustic properties generally attribute them to the natural byproduct of large stone chambers and specific architectural designs, rather than intentional use of sound as a power source. There is no scientific evidence that sound was used for levitation or material manipulation in ancient times. While some ancient cultures did use sound in rituals and for communication, there is no scientific basis for claims of acoustic energy manipulation in the way suggested by proponents. Beyond these specific examples, more general theories propose that ancient civilizations possessed advanced water-based energy systems beyond basic water mills for grinding grain. For example, some interpretations of Vimana propulsion from ancient Indian texts, mentioned in the Sky Vehicles chapter, mention systems involving water, mercury, or unusual liquids as propellants or energy sources. Proponents link this to advanced, lost energy generation methods. Similarly, highly speculative ideas about ancient hydroelectric systems suggest civilizations used complex hydroengineering not just for irrigation, but for large-scale power generation. Mainstream scholarship, however, consistently interprets these textual descriptions as mythological, not technical manuals, and finds no archaeological evidence for such advanced power generation systems. The underlying premise of hidden energies is that ancient civilizations possessed a scientific understanding of physics, including electricity, magnetism, and acoustics, that was either lost due to cataclysms, societal collapse, or perhaps deliberately suppressed. This suggests that what might appear as magic or spiritual power in ancient accounts was, in fact, an application of forgotten scientific principles and technologies. This challenges the entire linear progression of scientific discovery and technological development, implying that humanity has experienced advanced technological epochs that were subsequently erased from historical memory. Mainstream scientific skepticism towards hidden energies theories is based on several key points. Firstly, there is a pervasive lack of direct archaeological evidence. No ancient wires, generators, power lines, control panels, or clear written records describing the harnessing of such energy sources have ever been found. Secondly, many of these theories rely on the misinterpretation of symbolism. Religious or mythological iconography, like the Dendera light, is often mistaken for technical diagrams, ignoring its deep cultural and spiritual context. Thirdly, there is often a misunderstanding of ancient capabilities. What ancient people could achieve through immense labour, ingenious practical methods, and empirical observation is frequently underestimated, leading to the attribution of complex science to feats that can be explained by simpler means. Fourthly, the proposed mechanisms for energy generation, such as pyramid power or sonic levitation, often lack any modern scientific validation or directly defy known laws of physics without a clear, new principle being identified and demonstrated. Finally, the standard for proving such revolutionary claims, which would completely rewrite human history, is extraordinarily high, and the evidence presented for hidden energies does not meet that threshold for widespread scientific acceptance. If theories of hidden energies were ever definitively proven, it would indeed trigger a complete revolution in our understanding of human history, technological progress, and the very origins of various scientific fields, with the potential for rediscovering lost energy technologies. However, at present, these remain in the realm of intriguing, unproven speculation. Crystals, particularly quartz, have held significance for ancient cultures across the globe. Their inherent beauty, transparency, and hardness made them valuable for various purposes. For tools, such as obsidian or chert used for flint knapping, for jewellery and decorative objects, and for ritualistic or symbolic purposes. Mainstream archaeology acknowledges that ancient artisans were highly skilled in working with various types of stone and crystal, using laborious abrasive techniques involving harder stones and sand. This process was slow and required immense patience and skill, resulting in objects shaped through grinding and polishing over long periods. However, a particular set of artifacts known as crystal skulls presents a significant puzzle within forbidden archaeology. These objects, purportedly ancient, exhibit a level of carving precision, anatomical detail, and polish in extremely hard crystal materials, primarily quartz, that seems to defy the known technological capabilities of the cultures to whom they are attributed. This leads to the central premise of crystal wonders, that these skulls suggest advanced, unknown carving techniques, or that they are from a different, non-indigenous origin, implying a lost technology. Among the most famous crystal skulls are the Mitchell-Hedges skull, the British Museum skull, the Paris skull, and the Smithsonian skull. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, perhaps the most renowned, is a life-sized, highly polished skull made of clear quartz, featuring a separate, removable jaw. Its anatomical accuracy and the incredible polish of its surfaces are often highlighted by proponents. The British Museum skull is also clear quartz, slightly larger than life-sized with detailed features. The Paris skull, smaller and made of milky quartz, is less refined than the others. The Smithsonian skull is a small clear quartz skull, also exhibiting fine details. These skulls, and others, have been attributed by proponents to various pre-Columbian Mesoamerican civilizations, such as the Maya, Aztec, or Olmec, despite often lacking verified archaeological excavation contexts. Proponents of the crystal skulls assert their ancient origin, sometimes claiming they were carved by unknown, highly advanced civilizations, or even had a connection to extraterrestrial beings, aligning with ancient astronaut theories. Beyond their purported origins, many also believe the crystal skulls possess mystical properties, such as spiritual power, healing abilities, or the capacity to store ancient knowledge or memories, often leading to their use in New Age practices. Claims of their discovery in ancient ruins or temples have been widely circulated, though such claims typically lack proper archaeological documentation. The impossible carving problem for these crystal skulls revolves around the hardness of quartz. Quartz ranks 7 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, meaning it is harder than common metals like steel and cannot be easily cut or carved by them. To carve quartz with precision requires tools made of even harder materials, such as diamond, Mohs 10, or corundum, Mohs 9, combined with high-speed rotary action and abrasive grit. The problem arises because known pre-Columbian Mesoamerican cultures did not possess such tools. Their stone carving techniques involved harder stone tools like jade or obsidian, used with abrasive sand and water, a slow and painstaking process that typically leaves irregular, non-rotary marks. The precision observed in features like the eye sockets, teeth, and the overall polish of the crystal skulls is argued by proponents to be beyond the capabilities of such primitive methods, especially given the hardness of the material. However, mainstream scientific investigations have largely debunked the claims of ancient origin for the famous crystal skulls. Doubts began to emerge in the 1970s due to the lack of clear archaeological context for most of the major skulls. The most comprehensive investigations were conducted in the 1990s by researchers at the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution, notably Jane McLaren Walsh, an anthropologist, and Margaret Sachs, a conservation scientist. Their methodology involved using advanced techniques, particularly scanning electron microscopy, SEM, to examine the tool marks on the surface of the skulls. The findings from these investigations were conclusive for the skulls examined, including the Mitchell-Hedges, British Museum, and Smithsonian skulls. The scanning electron microscope revealed microscopic concentric rotary abrasive marks on the surfaces of the skulls. These marks are consistent with the use of modern lapidary equipment, such as a jeweler's wheel or high-speed rotary tools with diamond or corundum-coated abrasives. Furthermore, chemical analysis of some of the polishing residues found on the skulls identified modern polishing abrasives. These types of tool marks and materials are entirely inconsistent with known pre-Columbian Mesoamerican carving techniques, which would have left irregular, non-rotary scratches from manual grinding and polishing with abrasive sand and water. The fine details on the skulls were also found to be consistent with modern carving methods. Based on these findings, the scientific conclusion is that the investigated crystal skulls are modern forgeries, likely created in the 19th or early 20th centuries. Germany, particularly Ida Oberstein, was a known centre for quartz cutting and lapidary work during this period, and many of the skulls are believed to have been manufactured there. The elaborate ancient origin stories associated with the skulls, often involving dramatic discoveries in ancient ruins, were fabricated to increase their perceived value and mystical appeal. Dating the skulls directly has also been challenging because quartz contains no organic material for radiocarbon dating. While some analysis of fluid inclusions within the quartz might indicate the geological age of the crystal itself, this does not determine when it was carved. Despite the extensive scientific debunking, the belief in the ancient origins and mystical properties of crystal skulls persists in popular culture and certain spiritual communities. This persistence is often fueled by fictional narratives, the inherent allure of mystery, and the desire for ancient wisdom or powers that transcend conventional understanding. The emotional and mystical appeal of these objects often overrides the scientific evidence, leading to continued belief even in the face of rigorous disproof. Reconciling the advanced artistry of ancient cultures with the debunking of crystal skulls requires acknowledging the immense skill and ingenuity of ancient peoples. Ancient Egyptians, for example, demonstrated incredible craftsmanship in working with hard stone, as seen in their diorite vessels and granite sarcophagi. However, even these feats, while impressive, were achieved through laborious, time-consuming methods using abrasive techniques suitable for their available tools. The scientific findings on crystal skulls highlight that there are specific limits to what can be achieved without certain technological advancements, like high-speed rotary tools made possible by modern engineering. The precision seen in the crystal skulls is definitively linked to modern manufacturing techniques, not ancient ones. Therefore, while crystal skulls are indeed crystal wonders in terms of their intricate carving and polished surfaces, their mystery is not one of lost ancient technology. Instead, their mystery lies in the fascinating history of how they became cultural phenomena, symbols of a fabricated ancient past, and how belief can persist even when confronted with overwhelming scientific evidence. The implications, if they had been genuinely ancient, would have been profound, requiring a complete re-evaluation of ancient technological capabilities, particularly in gem cutting and carving, and dramatically altering our understanding of the specific cultures to whom they were originally attributed. However, due to the comprehensive scientific debunking, this remains in the realm of fiction rather than archaeological fact. The human experience with powerful and destructive floods is universal, reflected in a multitude of myths and legends across diverse cultures spanning continents and millennia. From ancient Mesopotamia to indigenous communities in the Americas, and from East Asia to the Pacific Islands, narratives of a great deluge that reshaped the world are remarkably widespread. These stories typically describe a cataclysmic inundation, often sent by divine powers to punish humanity, from which only a select few survivors managed to escape, eventually repopulating the Earth and starting a new age. The prevalence of these myths raises a fundamental question for historians and scientists. Do these widespread flood narratives represent independent cultural responses to localized natural disasters, or do they preserve a collective memory of a single, catastrophic global event that truly reshaped the world and perhaps ended a previous, forgotten civilization? One of the oldest and most influential flood narratives comes from ancient Mesopotamia, specifically detailed in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Atrahasis epic, dating back over 4,000 years. These texts describe a divine decision to destroy humanity with a great flood. A hero, Utnapishtim in Gilgamesh, or Atrahasis in his own epic, is warned by a benevolent god and instructed to build a massive boat or ark to save his family, animals, and the seeds of all life. The flood ensues, covering the world, wiping out all other life before eventually subsiding, allowing the hero's vessel to land on a mountain. This narrative bears striking similarities to the biblical flood story. The biblical account of Noah's Ark in the book of Genesis, a foundational text for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, describes a global flood covering all the high mountains under the whole heaven. God decides to cleanse the earth of wickedness, instructing Noah to build an ark of specific dimensions, filling it with his family and pairs of all land animals. The flood is caused by 40 days and nights of rain, and the breaking open of springs of the great deep, leading to a complete inundation of the earth. After approximately 1 year and 10 days, the waters recede, the ark lands on the mountains of Ararat, and Noah's family repopulates the earth. This narrative has had an immense cultural and theological influence worldwide, shaping beliefs about Earth's history and humanity's relationship with the divine. Its emphasis on a truly global event and the miraculous preservation of life makes it a central point of discussion for those exploring global flood theories. Greek mythology also features a significant flood narrative, centered on Deucalion and Pyrrha. Zeus, angered by the wickedness of the Bronze Age people, decides to destroy them with a great flood. Prometheus warns his son Deucalion, who builds an ark and with his wife Pyrrha survives the 9-day deluge. Their ark lands on Mount Parnassus, and they repopulate the earth by throwing stones over their shoulders, which transform into people. While somewhat less detailed than the Mesopotamian or biblical accounts, it shares core elements of divine judgment, a heroic survivor, and a worldwide water cataclysm. Indigenous American cultures also possess a vast array of flood myths, particularly those from Mesoamerica and various North American tribes. The Maya Quiche people, in their sacred text the Popol Vuh, describe a flood sent by the gods to destroy a previous failed creation of humanity. The Inca people have myths of a great flood that covered the mountains, from which a few people survived by taking refuge in high places or specially built boats. Numerous North American indigenous tribes, including the Cherokee, Navajo, and Ojibwe, tell stories of immense floods that submerged the land, often involving a monstrous creature or divine punishment, with a small group of people or animals surviving on a high mountain or in a canoe. While these myths are incredibly diverse in their details, common elements include a massive rising of waters, mountain refuges, warnings given to a chosen few, and the recreation or repopulation of the world. Chinese mythology also recounts a great flood, most famously associated with Gun Yu and his son Yu the Great, who tirelessly worked to control the waters and create channels, allowing humanity to flourish. Aboriginal Australian, African, Polynesian, and Norse mythologies all contain similar powerful narratives of world-destroying water events. The consistent theme of near-total destruction by water and the survival of a select few is striking. For proponents of a single global cataclysm theory, the remarkable similarities across these geographically and culturally independent narratives suggest a shared, real memory of a single catastrophic global flood event that predates recorded history. They argue that such a widespread and consistent theme cannot be explained by mere coincidence or isolated local floods. Instead, it must point to a true traumatic event that impacted humanity globally, and its memory was passed down through generations, becoming embellished into myth. The mechanisms proposed for such a global flood are speculative and vary widely. These include colossal comet or asteroid impacts causing immense tidal waves that sweep across continents, rapid and complete melting of remaining ice sheets from a warmer period, sudden pole shifts causing massive crustal displacement and widespread inundation, or even more exotic ideas like a celestial flood from a water canopy that supposedly existed above the Earth's atmosphere. The impact on civilization, according to this theory, would have been profound. Such a global flood is seen as the ultimate mechanism for explaining the loss of a previous, possibly advanced, global civilization, which would have been situated on now submerged coastal plains, or simply utterly destroyed by the deluge. The few survivors, having witnessed the cataclysm, would have become the progenitors of later, less advanced cultures, carrying with them the fragmented memories of the flood, and perhaps a few remnants of lost knowledge. This provides a powerful explanation for the perceived reset of civilization, where advanced human activity seems to vanish from the archaeological record, only to re-emerge millennia later in a more primitive form. Proponents of a global flood also sometimes point to geological features as evidence. These include the presence of erratic boulders, large rocks seemingly out of place in their geological setting far from their source, which they argue were transported by immense water currents rather than glaciers. They might cite widespread deposits of gravel and sediment in unusual places as evidence of massive sudden water movements, or point to large-scale erosional features that seem too vast for ordinary riverine or atmospheric processes. The discovery of marine fossils at high altitudes on mountains is also occasionally presented as proof of a global flood. However, in mainstream geology, erratic boulders are well understood as products of glacial transport. Sedimentary deposits are explained by various geological processes over vast periods, including fluvial, aeolian, and marine deposition, not a single, recent global flood. Marine fossils found at high altitudes are explained by the well-established process of tectonic uplift, where ancient seabeds, formed millions of years ago, are slowly uplifted to become mountain ranges. Polystrate fossils, such as tree trunks that cut through multiple rock layers, are sometimes interpreted by creationists as evidence of rapid burial during a global flood, but mainstream geology explains them as trees buried by localized rapid sedimentation over shorter time periods, such as in volcanic eruptions or localized floods. The mainstream scientific perspective on global flood myths is largely unified. While flood events are common and devastating, there is no geological evidence for a single global flood in human history that simultaneously covered all land masses. The Earth's geological record, studied through stratigraphy, paleontology, and geochronology, does not show a single, continuous layer of global flood deposits that would correspond to such an event within the human time frame. The distribution of plants and animals, the age of specific landscapes, and the continuity of human archaeological sites across continents are also inconsistent with a recent worldwide inundation. Scientific explanations for the widespread nature of flood myths typically attribute them to multiple localized but devastating flood events. Humans have historically settled near rivers and coastlines, areas highly vulnerable to natural disasters. Riverine floods, coastal tsunamis caused by earthquakes or landslides, and periods of unusually heavy rainfall can all lead to catastrophic local inundations that could destroy communities and leave powerful cultural memories. These experiences, combined with the human psychological tendency to create narratives of destruction and renewal, can lead to similar stories emerging independently across different cultures. Cultural diffusion, where stories are transmitted through trade, migration, and cultural exchange, can also account for similarities in flood narratives between neighbouring or interacting peoples, even if the originating event was regional. Thus, the common elements of flood myths are seen as a result of either shared human experiences with localized disasters or cultural exchange, rather than a single, universal catastrophe. While no evidence supports a global flood, some regional flood hypotheses are debated within mainstream science. One notable example is the Black Sea Deluge theory, proposed by William Ryan and Walter Pittman in the 1990s. This theory suggests a catastrophic inundation of the Black Sea Basin around 7,600 years ago. At the time, the Black Sea was a freshwater lake, considerably smaller than its current size. As sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age, the theory posits that the Mediterranean Sea, which was saltier and higher, eventually breached a land bridge, possibly at the Bosphorus Strait, causing a rapid and massive influx of saltwater into the Black Sea Basin. This event would have dramatically expanded the Black Sea's area, displacing coastal populations and flooding vast amounts of fertile land. While this event was regional, not global, its immense scale and suddenness could have been a traumatic event for the early agricultural communities living on its shores, potentially serving as the basis for some of the local flood myths, which then spread culturally. The exact nature and impact of this Black Sea event remain subjects of ongoing geological and archaeological research, with aspects of the theory still debated. Another well-documented example of immense but localized floods are the Missoula floods in North America. These were a series of catastrophic regional floods that occurred towards the end of the last ice age, between approximately 15,000 and 13,000 years ago. They were caused by the sudden draining of Glacial Lake Missoula, an immense ice-dammed lake in present-day Montana, which repeatedly burst its ice dam, sending torrents of water across eastern Washington and down the Columbia River Gorge. These floods were immense in scale, shaping vast landscapes and creating unique geological features like the channeled scablands. While these were undeniably massive water events, they were localized to specific regions and do not represent a global inundation. They serve as an example of the sheer power of water in shaping landscapes, but within a regional and geologically understood context. The global flood theory often aligns with catastrophism, a geological concept suggesting that Earth's features and history have been shaped by sudden, violent, large-scale events, as opposed to uniformitarianism, the dominant geological paradigm that posits slow, gradual changes over immense time. For proponents of forbidden archaeology, a global flood is the ultimate mechanism for explaining the loss of a highly advanced previous civilization. Such an event would completely wipe out most archaeological evidence, burying cities and erasing knowledge, leaving only fragmented memories preserved in myths. This allows for the idea of a societal reset, where humanity had to begin anew, gradually rebuilding its knowledge and technology. Finally, the discussion of global water floods is deeply intertwined with theological and philosophical implications. The biblical flood narrative, in particular, holds immense significance for billions of people and has profoundly influenced Western thought and science for centuries. This deep theological rooting can sometimes influence interpretations, leading to attempts to find scientific evidence for a literal global flood, even when it conflicts with geological and archaeological consensus. The scientific inquiry into flood myths, however, focuses on understanding their origins and widespread nature through empirical evidence and historical analysis, rather than seeking to validate specific religious texts. The Pleistocene epoch, commonly known as the Ice Age, was a period of Earth's history spanning from approximately 2.6 million years ago to about 11,700 years ago. It was characterized by repeated cycles of glacial expansion and retreat, with vast ice sheets covering large portions of North America, Europe, and Asia during glacial maximums. The last glacial maximum, occurring roughly 20,000 years ago, saw sea levels hundreds of feet lower than today, as immense volumes of water were locked up in these continental ice sheets. This created vastly different land masses, exposed continental shelves, and shifted coastlines. The accepted understanding of human life during this period is that humans existed as nomadic hunter-gatherer societies, utilizing Paleolithic tool technology, stone, bone, wood, adapting ingeniously to often harsh environments and gradually migrating across the globe, including the Americas via land bridges like Beringia. This narrative emphasizes a slow, adaptive progression of human development. However, a field of inquiry within forbidden archaeology explores theories that challenge this conventional understanding, proposing that Ice Age secrets lie buried beneath the ice or submerged under the post-glacial seas. The core idea is that evidence suggests sophisticated human activity, or even advanced civilizations, existed before or during the last Ice Age, rather than humanity being solely composed of primitive hunter-gatherers. This implies that our current understanding of post-Ice Age development is incomplete, because earlier high points of civilization are unrecognized, having been largely erased or hidden by the dramatic environmental changes of the Ice Age's end. Some of the challenges to the accepted timeline for human presence during the Ice Age were discussed in the Old Age Problem chapter. For instance, sites like Monteverde in Chile, dated to around 14,500 years ago, and Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania, with dates ranging from 16,000 to 19,000 years ago, push back the accepted timeline for human entry into the Americas to within the later stages of the last Ice Age. While these sites are now largely accepted by mainstream archaeology, they demonstrate that human presence in certain regions was earlier than previously thought, requiring adaptation to Ice Age conditions. The highly controversial Cerruti Mastodon site in California, with claims of hominid activity around 130,000 years ago, places potential tool-using hominids in the Americas during an earlier interglacial period within the Pleistocene, far predating the last glacial maximum. If proven, this would radically alter our understanding of the early human migration patterns and capabilities during much older Ice Age cycles. Evidence of advanced art and symbolic thought from the Ice Age also compels a re-evaluation of human cognitive capabilities. The magnificent cave art of the Upper Paleolithic period in Europe, such as at Chauvet, over 30,000 years old, Lascaux, around 17,000 years old, and Altamira, around 15,000 years old, demonstrates an incredible sophistication in artistic expression, perspective, and animal depiction. Mainstream archaeology sees this as a pinnacle of hunter-gatherer culture, revealing complex cognitive abilities, spiritual beliefs, and social organization. However, sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa push back the origins of advanced symbolic behavior much further into the Ice Age. This site has yielded engraved ochre pieces, shell beads, and sophisticated bone tools dating back around 100,000 years ago, indicating that modern human cognitive capacities, including abstract thought and symbolic behavior, were present in Africa far earlier than previously recognized. These discoveries continuously refine our understanding of how truly capable and intelligent Ice Age humans were, even if they did not form urban civilizations. Megalithic structures also appear in contexts that defy the conventional post-Ice Age development model. Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, dating to around 11,500 years ago, is a prime example. While it technically falls just after the last glacial maximum, its construction period is firmly within the climatic transition out of the Ice Age, and its builders were hunter-gatherers, not settled agriculturalists. Its monumental scale and complex, intricately carved T-shaped pillars challenge the long-held assumption that organised labour and sophisticated monumental construction only became possible after the development of agriculture and settled towns. Göbekli Tepe suggests that complex social structures and religious practices capable of undertaking massive building projects existed among hunter-gatherers at the very end of the Ice Age, dramatically altering our understanding of the origins of civilization itself. Underwater archaeological discoveries also offer potential Ice Age secrets. The Yonaguni Monument off Japan and the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, both discussed in the Watery Secrets chapter, are examples. If these structures are indeed artificial, their age estimates, 8,000 to 12,000 years old for Yonaguni, up to 12,000 years old for Bimini, would place their construction near or during the very end of the last glacial maximum, when sea levels were significantly lower. This would mean they were built on dry land during the Ice Age or its immediate aftermath, only to be submerged by the rapid post-glacial sea level rise. Their existence as artificial structures would imply a capacity for monumental construction and engineering by cultures existing during or immediately following the Ice Age, a period conventionally associated with less complex human activity. Geological evidence for lost land masses from the Ice Age also provides context for Ice Age secrets. Doggerland, for instance, was a vast land bridge that connected Great Britain to continental Europe during the Ice Age, when sea levels were much lower. As the ice sheets melted, this landmass became submerged, now lying beneath the North Sea. Archaeological surveys and dredging in the area have yielded numerous artifacts, including Mesolithic tools and animal bones, providing clear evidence that hunter-gatherer groups inhabited this now submerged landscape during the Ice Age. While Doggerland shows evidence of hunter-gatherer presence, not advanced civilization, it undeniably demonstrates that large, habitable landmasses from the Ice Age are now hidden underwater. Similarly, Beringia, the land bridge that connected Siberia and Alaska during the Ice Age, was crucial for human migration into the Americas. This was another vast Ice Age landscape, now mostly submerged, that provided a pathway and habitat for ancient populations. The idea that vast coastal shelf cities of a hypothetical Ice Age civilization would now be submerged on these expanded continental shelves is a logical extension of these proven geological phenomena, linking to the Watery Secrets chapter, but emphasizing the Ice Age origin of such potential sites. The reset hypothesis is a major component of theories involving Ice Age civilizations. This theory often incorporates the Younger Dryas impact theory. The Younger Dryas was a period of rapid global cooling that occurred between approximately 12,900 and 11,700 years ago, interrupting the general warming trend at the end of the last Ice Age. Some proponents, like Graham Hancock, suggest that this event was triggered by a comet impact over North America, leading to immense global devastation, massive floods from melting ice sheets, and widespread fires, causing a rapid reversion to near Ice Age conditions. Proponents of Ice Age civilizations argue that this catastrophic event acted as a reset button, wiping out or drastically reducing a highly advanced Ice Age civilization. The few survivors, having endured immense destruction, were forced to revert to a more primitive state, gradually rebuilding their societies from scratch, carrying only fragmented memories or knowledge of their prior advanced state. This theory provides an explanation for the perceived discontinuity in human development, where evidence of advanced civilization seems to vanish before the generally accepted rise of agriculture and urbanism. However, the Younger Dryas impact theory, as the cause of the cooling and a source of global cataclysm, is still highly debated within mainstream science, and there is no geological evidence of a global event that would wipe out an advanced civilization at this time, only evidence of regional impacts on hunter-gatherer cultures. Mainstream archaeological perspectives on Ice Age humans emphasize their remarkable adaptability and ingenuity in challenging environments. They were capable of complex social structures, evident in their burial practices, long-distance trade networks, and specialized hunting techniques. They created sophisticated tools tailored to their specific needs and developed complex symbolic cultures. However, these societies are understood to be hunter-gatherer bands or tribes, not civilizations in the sense of large urban centers, widespread agriculture, or writing systems that characterize later historical periods. The slow and steady development model posits that it was the end of the Ice Age and the subsequent climatic stability that allowed for the agricultural revolution, which then provided the surplus food necessary for supporting larger, more complex and sedentary populations, leading to the gradual emergence of urbanism and what we recognize as civilization. The challenges to definitively proving the existence of Ice Age civilizations are immense. Firstly, the immense destructive power of glacial cycles, rapid sea level rise and other geological processes, like erosion and sedimentation, would have obliterated or buried most evidence of delicate human constructs. Secondly, there is a pervasive lack of clear, unambiguous direct archaeological evidence for cities, widespread writing systems, or advanced metallurgy from the Ice Age. While hunter-gatherer sites are found, they do not show the hallmarks of complex civilizations. Thirdly, there are significant interpretive challenges. Distinguishing natural geological formations from artificial ones, or recognizing subtle signs of advanced activity from a different paradigm, is very difficult with the limited and fragmented evidence that might remain. Finally, the burden of proof for overturning the accepted timeline is extraordinarily high, requiring overwhelming and unambiguous archaeological, geological, and biological evidence that cannot be explained by conventional means. If Ice Age civilizations were ever definitively proven to have existed, it would necessitate a radical re-evaluation of human history and technological progression. It would mean rethinking the origins of agriculture and urbanism, potentially seeing them as rediscoveries rather than initial inventions. It would imply that humanity has experienced cycles of advancement and decline, rather than a linear path of continuous progress. Such a discovery would profoundly alter our understanding of human potential and the extent to which our knowledge and achievements might have been lost to the vast stretches of deep time and the devastating cataclysms that have shaped our planet. It remains a fascinating secret that continues to inspire inquiry into the deep, often hidden past of Earth and humanity.